Have you ever wondered about mysterious historical objects that seem almost alive, holding secrets we may never fully understand? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where we uncover the hidden stories of the world's most extraordinary relics. Before we begin, subscribe, hit like, and share in the comments where you're watching from and the time it is. Let's dive in. The drum that spoke to spirits. The story begins in the heart of West Africa, where the land breathes with rhythms older than memory, where voices rise not only in song, but in sound carried by wood and skin. Among the countless instruments that have emerged from human imagination, there is one that does not simply echo music, but carries whispers from the unseen, the djembe. Carved from a single piece of wood, stretched with the skin of an animal, bound tight with rope, is said to be more than an instrument. For generations it was called the drum that spoke to spirits. To hear it at night beneath the wide skies of Mali was to feel the veil between worlds tremble. The first makers of this drum did not see it merely as a thing created by hands, but as a vessel born from the living tree and the sacrificed animal, both still alive in another form, still possessing voices, waiting to be summoned by those who knew the language of rhythm. The wood chosen was never random. It was selected from the lenke tree, a tree believed to carry healing energy and sacred presence. Elders whispered that if the tree fell unwilling, its spirit would remain restless, and the drum would never sound right. But if chosen with care, with offerings laid at its roots, the tree would consent, and its voice would transform into something greater. When the hollowing began, it was not just carving, it was releasing the breath of the tree, preparing it to speak in a new tongue. Then came the skin, often goat, stretched and tightened until it could carry the striking hand into thunder, lightning, and rain. Some said that the veins in the skin were like the pathways of spirits, carrying energy each time the drum was struck. The rope binding was not only for tension but for sealing the pact between the human who made it and the other world that would hear it. It was said that the first djembe was given by the spirits themselves, a tale among the griots, the keepers of stories, history and music, tells that once, when the world was younger, a hunter followed an antelope deep into the forest. He lost his way, wandering in circles until he stumbled into a clearing where the trees stood impossibly tall and the air shimmered as if alive. There he saw beings not quite human, not quite animal, dancing around a fire. They carried a drum unlike any he had seen, and with each strike the flames leapt higher, the wind bent, and the trees swayed though no storm moved them. The hunter watched, entranced, until the beings saw him. Instead of anger they offered him the drum, telling him to bring it back to his people, for it was not meant to remain hidden. From that day, the drum entered the villages, and with it came not just music but communication with powers unseen. The drum was not played idly. In villages, it spoke when words failed, when grief was too heavy, when joy was too vast, when a message needed to travel faster than feet. In times of war, it thundered across the savannah, calling warriors together. In harvest, it sang to thank the earth. In initiation, it welcomed children into adulthood with rhythms that spoke of courage and belonging. In funerals, it beat like a heartbeat carried into the beyond, guiding the departed across the threshold. To the people, the drum was alive, an ancestor in its own right. It was said that when the master drummer played, he was not only creating rhythm, but unlocking the spirit voice hidden inside the wood and skin. The spirits listened, and sometimes they answered. There are stories of nights when storms threatened to destroy the crops, and the elders gathered with the drummers at the center of the village. As the sky cracked with lightning, the djembe called louder, its tones weaving with the thunder, until the storm turned and passed. Some believed the drum did not merely plead with the storm but commanded it, for the spirits of the sky could not resist its voice. There were also tales of healers who played certain rhythms by the sickbed, claiming the spirits carried illness away with each beat. To outsiders, it was music. To the villagers, it was dialogue with forces they could not see but always felt. The drum's role was not confined to ritual alone. It became the heartbeat of the griot tradition, where memory of kingdoms, battles, births, and deaths were preserved in rhythm and word together. The griot, holding the past in living memory, carried the djembe as a partner, using its voice to punctuate stories, to give weight to victories, to soften grief. The djembe was both a book and a bell, telling what could not be written, summoning those who needed to listen. Each rhythm carried meaning, one for gathering, one for mourning, one for dance, one for danger. To those who understood, the drum spoke a language as precise as speech, a language that stretched beyond one village, beyond one people, resonating across the lands of Mali, Guinea, Senegal, and beyond. And yet beneath all the uses lay its deeper truth. The djembe was believed to connect to the spirit world. Drummers sometimes said that they did not play, but were played through, that when their hands struck, they were guided by ancestors pressing their palms invisibly atop their own. At great ceremonies, when hundreds danced and the drumming reached its peak, People described visions, seeing ancestors, feeling spirits move among the crowd, as though the boundary between the living and the dead dissolved. It was not spectacle, it was communion. The drum was the doorway. When Europeans first encountered the djembe, they marveled at its sound but missed its meaning. To them it was a musical curiosity, an exotic instrument, a souvenir. They could not hear the spirit speaking, nor understand why the villagers approached it with reverence, offerings, and respect. But even they felt something unsettling, something stirring in the chest, when the rhythms rose like thunder rolling over plains. The djembe carried more than melody, it carried power, the kind that does not translate easily into words. Through the centuries, the drum traveled. Slaves carried its rhythms across oceans, though often without the drum itself, beaten into silence by those who feared its voice. Still, the memory of its patterns lived on in hands and in song, shaping new music in faraway lands, the blues, the jazz, the pulse of music that carried sorrow and resistance. And yet, in its homeland, it remained a sacred voice, still played in ceremony, still honored in initiation, still believed to call and answer with the spirit world. Legends tell of one drum, older than any living memory, kept hidden in a secret place by a lineage of drummers who claimed it was the first. Its sound was said to be unlike any other, deeper, sharper, carrying not only across miles but across time. When struck, it did not merely echo, it answered. Those who dared to play it spoke of dreams filled with fire, with rivers flowing backward, with ancestors who had no names appearing in their sleep. Some said the drum was too powerful, that it should never be played except at the turning of ages, when the world itself needed to be reminded of its connection to the unseen. Today the djembe is known worldwide, played on stages, in classrooms, in circles of drummers far from the land that gave it birth. Yet for those who still live in the villages of Mali and beyond, it remains what it always was, the drum that spoke to spirits. When its voice rises at night, under the same stars that watched the first hunter stumble into the clearing of dancing beings, the people still feel the veil thin. They say the ancestors come closer. They say the drum does not forget. And in its echo, if one listens closely, there is more than rhythm. There is conversation, a dialogue across time, a reminder that the world is not divided as cleanly as it seems, that wood, skin, hand, and spirit can still speak as one. The key that opened no locks. Wartzablang. In the heart of Rome, hidden within the layers of time and faith, there is a story about a key unlike any other. Unlike the heavy iron keys that turned in doors or gates, unlike the delicate golden ones that unlocked treasures, this key was said to open no earthly lock, no door of wood, no chest of stone. It was the key of St. Peter, a relic that carried the weight of both myth and belief, a symbol of power that transcended its simple shape. To look at it, one might see only a piece of metal, worn smooth by centuries of hands, small enough to hang unnoticed on a chain. But to those who held it, it was said to carry the authority of heaven itself, the power to open and close the gates that no human eye had seen, the doors that led not into palaces or prisons but into eternity. And so it was called the key that opened no locks. The story of this key begins with a fisherman, Peter. Known in his time as Simon, was a man of nets and salt, his life shaped by the waters of Galilee. He was not a scholar, not a king, not a man of armies, yet he became the foundation upon which an empire of faith would rest. The Gospels tell that Christ gave him the keys of the kingdom of heaven, promising that what he bound on earth would be bound in heaven, and what he loosed on earth would be loosed in heaven. The key, whether real or symbolic, became a mark of authority, a bridge between mortal and divine. But tradition whispers that one key, a real and physical one, was kept, passed down, guarded through centuries, a reminder that Peter's authority was not just written in Scripture, but held in hand. The earliest followers of Peter believed that he did hold such a key, not to the locks of Rome but to the unseen doors of faith. In the years after his martyrdom, when he was said to have been crucified upside down on the Vatican Hill, the key remained. Whether given to him by Christ himself, or fashioned later as a symbol, its presence grew in legend. Pilgrims whispered that to see it was to glimpse the threshold of heaven, to feel the invisible doors open in the soul. The key, unlike others, was not measured by the locks it opened, but by the power it represented. As centuries passed, Rome transformed. The small gatherings of believers hiding in catacombs became the heart of the Christian world. The Vatican rose, basilicas crowned the skyline, and popes claimed the throne once held by emperors. In their hands they carried not swords but keys, for the authority of Peter passed to them, and with it, the symbol of the key. The coats of arms of popes displayed crossed keys, one gold and one silver, representing heaven and earth, bound together. But somewhere in this sea of symbols, there was said to be the original, the relic itself, the key of St. Peter. Unlike relics of bone or cloth, which could be shown openly to crowds of pilgrims, the key was kept guarded. It was said to lie deep within the Vatican treasury, unseen by the masses. brought out only on rare occasions, held in silence, kissed by popes as they whispered prayers. Some claimed it was iron, dark and pitted with age, rough like the life of a fisherman. Others said it gleamed with gold, too perfect to be ordinary, marked by inscriptions long forgotten. Still others believed there was not one but two, paired like the keys in the papal arms, heaven and earth bound together. The truth was uncertain, and perhaps that was the point. The mystery of the key was greater than its appearance. Legends surrounded it. Some said that in times of crisis, when enemies threatened Rome, the key was carried in procession, and the city was spared. Others told that popes who held it too tightly, thinking of it as power rather than service, found themselves cursed, their reigns brief and troubled. There was even a tale of a thief, centuries ago, who broke into the Vatican to steal the key. He escaped with it hidden under his cloak, but when he tried to flee Rome, every road turned him back. No matter which gate he passed, he found himself walking in circles, always returning to the city. At last, in despair, he laid the key on the altar of a church and begged forgiveness. The key, they said, did not belong to hands that sought to use it for gain. It chose its keepers. The mystery deepened with time. Scholars argued whether Peter ever had a physical key at all. Some said the entire story was metaphor, an idea given shape by artists and tradition. Yet others swore that the key did exist, pointing to references in old inventories of relics, to whispers in Vatican records, to fragments of metal displayed in obscure chapels. The uncertainty only made the legend stronger, for a key that opens no locks is not bound by walls or doors, it is bound by belief. The faithful did not need to see it, they knew it was there, somewhere, kept in shadow, a reminder that their church was built not on stones alone, but on a fisherman's promise. The key became more than relic, it became symbol, woven into every act of the papacy. When a new pope is chosen, when the bells of St. Peter's ring, and the crowds fill the square, the keys appear, not the relic but the symbol, crossed in gold and silver. They are painted on banners, carved into thrones, stamped into coins. But behind all of these echoes lies the whispered thought that the real one still rests, somewhere deep in vaults where only the chosen may see. And yet, despite all this reverence, the paradox remained. This was the key that opened no locks. It was not meant to turn in iron doors or wooden chests. It was meant to signify the opening of what cannot be touched, the gates of heaven, the mysteries of faith, the connection between mortal and divine. Those who looked for a practical tool missed its point. Those who saw it as empty symbol missed its weight. For the true lock it opened was not on doors, but on hearts. In quiet chapels, where pilgrims prayed before altars, they whispered their sins, their fears, their hopes. Priests, in the name of Peter, pronounced forgiveness, and the people felt the unseen doors swing open. They left lighter, as though a key had indeed turned somewhere beyond their sight. When they looked up at the painted ceilings of St. Peter's, at the gilded mosaics, they felt themselves part of something vast, something that stretched back to a fisherman who once carried a key in his hand. Stories grew stranger still. Some said the key had been tested. A pope in the Middle Ages, beset by doubt, brought it out of the treasury and commanded that it be pressed to the chains of St. Peter, relics of the prison that held the apostle. To the astonishment of those present, the chains loosened, links falling open as though unlocked. The pope fell to his knees, realizing that the key had no lock because it was meant for chains no man could see. Another tale told of a vision, that when the key was struck against stone it rang like a bell, and voices answered in the silence, voices not of the living but of the countless faithful who had gone before. Whether these stories were true or imagined hardly mattered. The key lived in both worlds, half relic, half idea, held between hands and belief. And through centuries of wars, reformations, schisms, and trials, it remained, the symbol of continuity, the silent proof that what was begun by a fisherman endured. Today, in Vatican City, tourists flood the museums, staring at wonders of art in gold, marveling at Michelangelo's dome, craning their necks at ceilings painted with stories of creation and judgment. They see the papal arms with crossed keys carved in marble and bronze. They hear guides speak of Peter, of martyrdom, of relics. But the real key, the one whispered of in shadows, they do not see. Some say it lies in a reliquary so plain it draws no attention, hidden in a drawer rather than a shrine, its power not in display but in secrecy. Others believe it was lost long ago, melted down, or broken, its fragments scattered but its meaning intact. And still others think it never needed to exist at all, that the key is every hand raised in prayer, every voice lifted in forgiveness, every moment of faith that opens a lock no metal could touch. The truth may never be known. Perhaps there is indeed a piece of iron, rough and ancient, resting quietly in the Vatican vaults, a relic touched by Peter's hand. Or perhaps the key has always been something else entirely, an unseen reality carried not in metal but in spirit. Either way, its legend endures, because it is a key that asks nothing of locks, a key that belongs to doors we cannot see, a key that waits not to be turned in stone, but in the hidden chambers of the heart. And so the story of the key that opened no locks lives on, in the city where Peter was laid to rest, in the faith of millions who look to Rome, in the mystery that lingers whenever keys are crossed in gold and silver upon banners and altars. For in the end, the greatest keys are not the ones that rattle in doors, but the ones that remind us there are doors beyond sight, and that sometimes, a key that opens no locks is the one that opens everything. The sword that waited for a hand. The story begins in silence, the kind of silence that clings to old stone and moss, the kind that hums faintly beneath the air of forgotten valleys. Long before the world of men was mapped and measured, there was said to be a sword, not a weapon forged for war, but an object made to wait. Unlike other blades, its destiny was not to cut, not to strike, not to clash against shield or armor, but to remain, resting within the grip of stone, until a hand was found worthy to lift it. In the green heart of England, beyond the rolling hills and the winding rivers that remember every whisper of the wind, the tale of the sword first took root. Some say it was a story woven into the land itself, etched into memory by the Druids who walked the misty forests. Others believed it was hammered into being by blacksmiths who knew secrets older than iron, shaping not just metal but fate itself. Whatever its truth, the sword was unlike any other, and what made it so strange was not what it did, but what it did not. For all its brilliance, it remained still. For all its sharpness, it never cut. For all its potential, it slumbered. The stone that cradled it was not ordinary rock. Some claimed it was the remnant of a fallen star, something brought from the heavens to anchor the weapon to the earth. Others thought it was the work of magic, a block carved not from quarry or mountain but from silence itself. No matter the explanation, the stone did not yield. No mason could chip it, no chisel could bite into its surface. And though many tried to pry the sword from its resting place, the hilt never shifted, the blade never trembled. It was as if the sword had been grown into the stone like a tree into soil, bound not by grip but by destiny. Time passed, and the story spread. Farmers whispered of it by firelight, traveling bards wove songs around it, kings and lords sent riders to see it, to touch it, to prove their strength. Yet the result was always the same: the sword did not move. Children would press their small fingers against its hilt, dreaming that perhaps innocence itself was the key. Warriors, with muscles hardened by battle, wrapped their fists around the grip and pulled until their faces burned red. But the sword remained quiet. Even priests, cloaked in robes and chants, placed their hands upon it, murmuring prayers into the stone, but no blessing, no rite, no sacred word could coax it free. It was said the sword was not merely waiting, it was listening. Listening for the footsteps of one who had not yet arrived, for the voice of one not yet born, for the spirit of one who did not yet belong to the age of kings. Until then, the weapon slept, hidden in plain sight, a riddle etched into iron. Seasons shifted, empires rose and fell in distant lands. Yet in the valley where it rested, the sword remained unchanged. The grass grew high, wilted, and grew high again. Trees shed leaves into the soil, and grew new branches toward the sky. Generations came and went, but the sword was untouched by time, and so the land began to weave itself around the blade. The people who lived nearby grew accustomed to it, as though it were part of the earth itself, like a river or a cliff. To them it was not merely a relic but a presence, a reminder that some mysteries were meant not to be solved but to be endured. The sword was not owned by anyone, and yet it belonged to everyone, in the way that a legend belongs equally to all who hear it. Still, in every age, there were those who tried. Men of ambition saw in it a crown waiting to be claimed. They believed that to free the sword would mean to own the land, to rule not just with steel but with destiny. Knights journeyed across seas, believing their valor would grant them the strength. They arrived, pulled, and left empty-handed. Their pride turned to silence, and yet there was always something haunting in their failure. They did not leave as they came. Those who touched the sword claimed it carried a weight, not of iron but of judgment. Some said the hilt grew warm beneath their grasp, as though the sword itself were alive, measuring them. Others whispered that, as they pulled, they heard a sound, faint, like a sigh beneath the earth, as if the stone itself were breathing. For centuries the question lingered: why was it there? Who had placed it? And what hand was it waiting for? Some whispered that it was forged by Merlin, the wandering magician whose shadow stretched across the myths of Britain. They said he quenched the hot iron, not in water, but in the blood of time itself, sealing within the sword not only power, but patience. They believed he set it into the stone to guard against false kings, ensuring that only the true heart, the destined one, would awaken it. Others believed it was older still, a remnant of a forgotten age, when gods walked the forests and left behind their relics. To them, the sword was not a promise, but a warning, a blade bound until mankind was ready to face what it carried. But as the years turned to centuries, as kingdoms fractured and wars raged, the sword did not stir. And the more it resisted, the more the land itself seemed to bend around its stillness. People began to call it cursed. They avoided touching it, avoided looking too long at its hilt, shining faintly, even beneath moss and rain. It became less of a promise and more of a silence that pressed against the heart like a question that could never be answered. Yet the sword endured. When storms rolled across the hills, lightning sometimes struck near the stone, splitting trees in its fury, but never touching the blade. When fires swept the countryside, the sword remained untouched, the stone cool as though the flames had bowed to it. And when men came with tools of iron to break the rock, their chisels snapped, their hammers bent, their efforts lost to dust. It was as if the sword had chosen not merely to wait, but to endure until all who were unworthy had exhausted themselves. Legends grew like ivy. Some said the sword had a voice, but spoke only to the dead. Others claimed that each failure to pull it free was recorded in the blade, etched invisibly into its surface, so that one day, when it was lifted, the chosen hand would feel the weight of every attempt, every failure, every ambition that had come before. And always, the people returned to the same question: what sort of hand could awaken such a weapon? Was it strength? Was it wisdom? Was it purity? Or was it something else entirely? Something nameless, something only the sword itself could recognize. The years pressed on, children grew old men became dust, and the sword waited. Through war, through plague, through silence, it did not change. Until, one day, a boy, not a knight, not a king, not a priest, placed his hand upon the hilt, and the world remembered what it had been waiting for. The idol that drank the river. The Nile is a river of endless patience. It winds through stone and sand as if time itself were a current within its waters. To the people of ancient Egypt, it was not merely a river, but the breath of the world, the lifeline that could flood with generosity or withhold its gift to starve the land. Year after year, century after century, its rhythm dictated the survival of kingdoms. Villages sprouted along its banks like reeds, their lives tethered to its moods. And among these waters, hidden in the shifting interplay of silt and stone, there was once an idol said to drink the river itself, a statue carved for Sobek, the crocodile god, who watched with lidless eyes from both the depths of the current and the shrines built in his honor. Sobek was not a gentle god. To the Egyptians, he was the embodiment of both creation and destruction, fertility and fear. His shape was the crocodile, jaws wide, scales gleaming with the wetness of the river. People had seen enough of the Nile's dangers to understand him. Crocodiles dragged livestock, fishermen, and even children beneath the surface. Yet those same creatures also symbolized strength and protection. The Egyptians did not simply fear Sobek, they courted him, coaxed him, offered him respect so that his teeth might turn away from their flesh and toward their enemies. In shrines along the Nile, they built him statues, some small enough to fit in the palm of the hand, others towering in polished stone. But there was one idol, whispered in legend, that drank the river itself. It was carved, they said, during a reign now half erased from records, when a pharaoh sought to harness the Nile's strength. This pharaoh, unnamed in most inscriptions, was desperate. The floods had failed for 3 consecutive years. Hunger gnawed at the kingdom like an unseen plague. Priests brought forward rituals, offerings, even human sacrifices, but the river remained reluctant. Desperation drove artisans to the quarries. They shaped from dark stone the likeness of Sobek, with exaggerated jaws, hollowed through the mouth, as if to make him breathe or devour. The idol was lowered with ceremony onto the riverbank, aligned so that the Nile itself would seem to pour into its mouth. In the humid nights, under moonlight, the water slid through its carved throat, vanishing into channels no one could trace. Those who saw it swore the river bent toward it. Fishermen claimed currents shifted, steering into the jaws of stone. They whispered that fish vanished near it, as if swallowed. Villagers told each other that offerings cast upon the Nile drifted not downstream, but into the idol's maw. Priests called it a miracle, a sign that Sobek himself was appeased. The pharaoh ordered daily ceremonies at its base, pouring milk, wine, and blood into the waters, all consumed by the stone. For a season, the floods returned, the fields revived, grain rose high, the kingdom feasted, and so the legend of the idol that drank the river was born. But balance never holds. When plenty came, greed followed. Nobles demanded the idol be fed more, that its hunger be matched with their ambition. Soon sacrifices were not of food or wine, but of animals, cattle driven to the river and slaughtered so their blood could drift into the current. When even that was not enough. When the river's floods again wavered, rumors told of darker offerings, unwanted children, prisoners of war, those whose names were erased before they were given to the current. Always the idol drank, the stone mouth never filled. Generations passed, and still the statue remained. Dynasties crumbled, others rose. Some pharaohs feared the idol and ordered it sealed or buried, but floods or rebellions always brought it back into view. When temples to other gods fell, Sobek's idol endured, silt burying it, water revealing it. Farmers who stumbled upon it by accident swore their wells went dry unless they brought tribute. Soldiers marching along the riverbank avoided it, stepping wide into the reeds rather than let their shadows touch its stone lips. By the time of the Greeks, who walked the Nile with curiosity and conquest, the idol was already considered ancient. Travelers from lands across the sea wrote of a statue half submerged, jaws yawning toward the current, eyes eroded yet watchful. They wrote of local priests who still came at dusk, whispering incantations in a tongue the Greeks could not follow. They wrote of crocodiles gathering thickest near that stretch of river, as though answering some unheard call. The idol, they noted, seemed to drink even the moonlight that touched it, as if no illumination could rest upon its surface without being devoured. The Romans, too, heard of it. Soldiers stationed in Egypt muttered about the cursed statue along the river, where comrades vanished during night patrols, dragged down not by animals but by something colder, heavier, that left no ripple. Some officers tried to destroy it, to drag it out and shatter it. Chains snapped, fires sputtered. One account spoke of an entire unit drowned when they attempted to haul it inland, the river rising without storm, a sudden wall of water that swept them away. Rome, practical and pragmatic, left it alone after that. Sobek's idol was catalogued but untouched. Through centuries, stories persisted. Local fishermen refused to cast nets within sight of it. Pilgrims avoided the stretch of river that was its domain. The idol was never in one fixed place, or so the tales claimed. It shifted. Floods buried it. Drought revealed it. Sandstorms concealed it again. Sometimes it appeared upriver, other times down. Always it was there. Somewhere. Waiting. And always it was thirsty. By the Middle Ages, when foreign traders sailed from the east and explorers rode from the west, the idol had slipped into half-memory. Some spoke of it only as a metaphor, a way to describe the Nile's endless appetite. But villagers still swore by it. Mothers still warned children not to linger near certain bends in the river. The idol drinks more than water, they whispered, and there were those who claimed to have seen it. Moonlit glimpses of crocodilian stone, jaws open as if in silent laughter, the current bending inward. In more modern centuries, archaeologists grew curious. The Nile yielded countless treasures, temples, tombs, jewels, even mummified crocodiles in shrines to Sobek. Yet the idol itself, the one that drank the river, seemed elusive. Reports surfaced from time to time. A French traveler in the 18th century who described a black stone head rising from floodwater. A British explorer in the 19th who found villagers making offerings of bread at a hidden bend. A local tale of a priest's descendant who claimed his family had guarded the idol for generations, ensuring no one defiled it. Each report added weight to the myth. Each failure to find it only deepened the unease. And then there were the strange events. A team of divers in the 20th century mapping a submerged ruin recorded odd disturbances near Luxor. Equipment failed. Currents shifted unpredictably, pulling them toward a carved opening in the silted riverbed. One diver swore he saw teeth, not of flesh but of stone, before the water clouded. Another claimed to hear a sound like deep inhalation, a steady pulling, as if the Nile itself were breathing through a mouth. Their footage was inconclusive, but the fear in their accounts was undeniable. They never returned. Yet the Nile still flows. Each year its waters rise and fall. Each year new legends are added to old ones. Some say the idol is bound not to a place but to the river itself, drifting along its currents, never fully lost, never fully found. Others say it lies beneath the silt of a single ancient temple, waiting for the right moment to surface. And there are those who believe it is not stone at all, but something older, given the shape of Sobek only so mortals could look upon it without madness. Whatever truth lies beneath, the people who live by the river still leave offerings at its banks when the floods grow uncertain. Bread, beer, blood, quiet gifts for the mouth that drinks but never fills. The Nile is endless, but so is hunger. And somewhere, beneath reeds and silt, jaws of stone remain parted, waiting for the river to flow again through their throat. They say if you listen on certain nights, when the moon is thin and the current is restless, you can hear the idol breathing. The water does not gurgle or crash but sighs, pulled inward as if swallowed by something deep, unseen and insatiable. No fisherman lingers on those nights. No torch dares cast its glow too near, for the idol does not forget. Its thirst is older than dynasties, older than gods carved in gold. It will drink until the river runs dry, and even then, it will still wait. The rains had ended. The desert skies turned again to their relentless blue, sharp as polished stone, and the Nile began its slow retreat, leaving behind dark soil glistening with promise. Crops would take root in that rich gift, and people whispered thanks, not only to Rock who lit the sky, but to Sobek, whose jaws had opened and closed with the river's every rise and fall. To the villagers who lived closest to the water, the idol of Sobek was more than a carved stone. It was a presence, heavy and watchful. its crocodile face waiting for offerings, its eyes dull yet endless, like the pools of the Nile that never seemed to empty. Priests moved through the temple halls barefoot, the scent of lotus oil clinging to their linen. They whispered of balance, that the river must drink and be sated, that Sobek himself must be honored so the floods did not turn into ruin. And so, at dusk, when the sun's heat eased and shadows stretched across the courtyards, they came to the idol carrying jars of cool water drawn from the river itself. Each jar was poured at its feet, soaking the sand beneath, darkening it, as if the statue's thirst were endless. Travelers, too, told stories. Merchants who followed the river spoke of nights when the idol seemed to stir, when its crocodile snout glistened as though wet, when the stone scales along its back seemed to ripple like water under moonlight. None dared to approach it then. To disturb Sobek was to risk the river turning against you, for as much as the Nile gave, it could also take. Fields drowned, homes swallowed, children carried away in the current. Generations passed, and the idol stood, drinking still. Its base grew caked with hardened layers of silt, as though the river had risen to it and left its trace. The villagers whispered that Sobek's appetite was never truly filled. He had drunk the blood of animals sacrificed to him. He had drunk the river's abundance, and still he wanted more. Some even claimed he drank the hearts of men. Stories arose of a boy who vanished after approaching the temple at night, of a fisherman who never returned from laying his nets too close to the banks. Each tale ended the same. Sobek was thirsty. When the pharaoh's armies marched past, banners snapping in the desert wind, they too paid their respects. The generals had the soldiers pour wine at Sobek's feet, crimson staining the earth like blood. For even the mightiest warrior feared the unseen currents of the Nile, the sudden shifts that could undo an empire's wealth in days. They prayed that Sobek would keep his temper chained, that his waters would rise when the fields begged for grain and would fall when the granaries were full. And so the idol endured, season after season, its stone face never changing, yet never quite the same. The people began to imagine its hunger as a rhythm, like the river itself. It swelled, it diminished, and always it returned. Children grew old and told their grandchildren, "The idol drinks because it must, and as long as it drinks, the Nile will flow." But there were darker murmurings too. At night, when the stars burned cold and bright over the desert, fishermen claimed they saw movements near the statue, shadows bent unnaturally, water rippling where there should have been stillness. The villagers muttered that Sobek did not just drink from the river, he drank from them. Their fears deepened in years when the Nile's flood failed, when cracks split the earth and the fields lay empty. Then they would gather at the idol, laying offerings of bread, honey, and sometimes, quietly, something more. A lamb led trembling to its side, a goat held fast by the priests, its blood running into the ground. The earth darkened, the air thickened, and the people swore the idol seemed to lean forward, as though listening. Over centuries, conquerors came and went. Greeks, then Romans, then men of new faiths who scorned the gods of the Nile. Yet the idol remained, buried in sand, uncovered, half forgotten, then remembered again. Farmers still whispered its name as they bent over their fields. Fishermen still traced the sign of the crocodile in the air before casting their nets. Even when the temples crumbled and the gods of Egypt faded into stories, the idol stood, heavy with silence, heavy with thirst, and perhaps it still drinks. Some explorers who walked among the ruins told of strange dampness at the base of the stone, though no river flowed nearby. Others claimed they heard a low sound, like water rushing far below the earth, though no current stirred. Scholars dismissed it as imagination, but those who lingered longest grew pale, speaking of dreams where they were carried away in black waters, their lungs burning, and a vast crocodile's mouth opening beneath them. What then is the truth of Sobek's idol? Was it stone alone, a carving to honor a god of water and teeth? Or was it something more? A vessel, a mouth through which the river itself drank, an opening into hunger older than empire? We cannot know for certain, we can only listen, as the Nile still moves, as its banks still tremble, and as the stories of Sobek still cling to the land like silt after the flood. The idol waits. It does not rush. It does not speak. It only drinks. And perhaps that is enough. The stone that sang at dawn. High among the rolling hills of northern Vietnam, where morning mist clings stubbornly to the slopes, and the air tastes faintly of damp earth and moss, there exists a secret older than most of the villages themselves. Hidden among the limestone ridges, in places where few travelers tread, lie the lithophone stones, vast, ancient slabs whose surfaces seem unremarkable at first glance, gray and weathered, chipped by centuries of wind and rain. Yet these stones are far from ordinary, for when the first light of dawn strikes them, when the world is still quiet and only the distant crow of a rooster dares to disturb the air, they sing. The sound is unlike anything one might expect from mere rock. It is not a clanging, harsh note. Rather, it is a vibration that seems to emanate from the very core of the earth, low and resonant, rolling across the valleys like the soft sigh of an awakening world. The tones shimmer, delicate and yet commanding, rising and falling in patterns that no human hand could have taught, no instrument could have invented. Locals tell stories that the stones have been singing since time before memory, before the rivers carved their paths, before the forests claimed the hills. And they say, if one listens closely, the stones do not merely sing, they speak. Travelers who have stumbled upon them in the early hours describe a sensation that is difficult to put into words. When you stand among the stones, bare feet touching cold limestone, the air itself seems to hum, the mist curls around your ankles, and the song of the lithophones wraps around your mind, weaving threads of thought that feel simultaneously ancient and personal. Some claim they hear voices from the past, whispers of people long gone who once walked these lands, tending fields, hunting in the forests, or praying to gods whose names have faded into legend. Others describe visions, fleeting and strange, a procession of ancestors moving silently among the stones, or light refracting in impossible patterns that bend reality itself. Archaeologists, intrigued by the phenomenon, have studied the lithophones extensively. They discovered that the stones are a unique type of rock, rich in quartz and iron, which allows them to produce precise musical notes when struck. But no scientific explanation can account for the way the sound carries so perfectly, or how certain notes seem to resonate with specific emotions. Some notes bring an overwhelming sense of calm, as if the listener's worries have been lifted from their shoulders. Others stir restlessness, as though the stones themselves are reminding the listener of a debt owed, a memory long buried, or a path not yet taken. Local villagers have learned to live in harmony with the stones, though they treat them with a reverence that borders on fear. They speak of ceremonies conducted at sunrise, where the elders will strike each lithophone in turn, allowing the stones to greet the day in order and rhythm. The children are warned not to touch the stones without guidance, for there are tales of those who in haste or curiosity disturbed a stone at the wrong moment, and were overtaken by visions that left them mute, trembling, or wandering the hills for days as if drawn by an invisible current. It is said that the stones respond not only to human presence but to the natural world itself. Birds perched on nearby branches, dew dripping from leaves, the wind threading through the limestone crevices, all contribute to the melody, and at times the stones seem to compose songs that are alive, shifting from moment to moment, impossible to record fully. Some mornings the music is gentle, almost a lullaby, coaxing the valley into a slow awakening. On other days, especially when storms are approaching, the song becomes urgent and foreboding, a reminder that nature, ancient and untamed, holds sway over mortal lives. Legends tell of a time when the stones were not solitary instruments but part of a vast network stretching across the region, each lithophone tuned to interact with the next, creating harmonies that could be heard for miles. People speak of warriors pausing in their march, mesmerized by the music of lovers meeting in secret, guided by the stone's song, of shamans who could interpret the melodies to predict floods, harvests, and the movements of kingdoms. The stones, it seems, were never simply decoration or entertainment, they were a language, a conduit between the earth and those who lived upon it. In modern times, the stones attract researchers, musicians, and curious travelers from around the world. Yet even with maps and guides, many find themselves lost among the hills, the terrain a labyrinth of limestone and vegetation, as though the stones themselves rearrange the landscape to guard their secrets. Those who reach the site are often struck by a profound silence before the sun rises, a silence that feels charged, as if holding its breath for what is to come. And when the first rays fall across the surfaces, touching each carefully, the stones awaken. The sound rolls across the valleys, more powerful than any speaker or instrument, and those who hear it feel a connection to time itself, to moments and people long past, to the slow carving of the hills, and to the endless rhythm of the earth. Some have tried to replicate the stone's music with modern instruments, but the results fall flat, lacking the depth, the resonance, the almost conscious quality of the lithophones. Others have attempted to record the sound with microphones and cameras, but playback never captures the full experience. It is a phenomenon meant to be felt in the presence of the stones, with the wind, the sun, and the valley itself completing the composition. Scholars argue, therefore, that the stones are not merely musical instruments, but a portal, a space where nature, history, and human consciousness intersect. Even at night, when the mist thickens and the moon hangs low over the hills, some say the stones hum faintly. They call it the echo of the day's song, a remnant of energy stored in the rock, or perhaps a message for those willing to listen in the quiet hours. Villagers tell of elders sitting by the stones at midnight, whispering prayers, and hearing the stones respond, a low resonance that vibrates through their bones. They claim that the stones know when danger approaches, when rivers flood or dry too quickly, when the earth itself shifts. The lithophones are not passive. They are alive in a way that defies scientific categorization, sentient in rhythm and tone. The stones have become a pilgrimage site, though not one of crowds or commerce. Travelers speak of a reverent hush that falls over the valley, of the way each step toward the lithophones feels like walking deeper into the heart of the earth. Some hear voices in the wind, others see shapes in the mist, but all feel the same pull, a magnetic tug of awe and something indefinable, a sense that the stones are old enough to remember the birth of the rivers, the first rains, the first cries of humankind. It is difficult to describe the feeling of standing among the lithophone stones at dawn. One might try, using words like harmony, resonance, vibration, or melody, yet these are pale shadows of the truth. The experience is a merging of all senses, a sensation of the world itself breathing through rock and mist, a connection to every dawn that has ever broken, every creature that has ever heard the first light touch the hills. The stones remind you that some things cannot be owned, recorded, or fully understood, only felt, and perhaps that is why the lithophones have endured, untouched by time, by empire, by greed. They are older than kingdoms, older than the rivers themselves. They sing not for fame nor for attention, but because they must, because the world requires it. And if you are fortunate enough to hear them at the first light of dawn, you understand why. The stones do not merely sing. They awaken memory, stir the soul, and bridge the gap between human life and the slow, eternal rhythm of the earth. The morning mist lifts, the sun climbs higher, painting the hills in gold. The stones fall silent, their song carried off by the wind in valleys. And yet, as the villagers will tell you, the music has not ended. It rests, waiting for the next dawn, for the next curious soul to wander among the hills and hear the ancient stones sing once again. And perhaps, if you listen closely, you too can hear it, the stone that sang at dawn. The scroll that burned in water. In a quiet valley tucked between the mist-covered mountains of central China, where the rivers run dark and slow, and bamboo forests sway with a secret rhythm, there exists a legend older than the temples themselves. It speaks of scrolls, delicate and ancient, made of silk and paper so fine that they almost dissolve in your fingers. But these are no ordinary scrolls. These are Taoist scrolls, inscribed with symbols and incantations that hum with power, a subtle energy that seems to defy the very laws of the world. Local monks speak in hushed tones of the day the scrolls revealed their impossible nature, of how they could endure fire but dissolve in water, of how the ink seemed to move on its own, arranging words into shapes and patterns that no human hand could have anticipated. Scholars have studied them, their eyes wide with both awe and disbelief, unable to reconcile the delicate beauty of the scrolls with the strange, almost supernatural properties they exhibit. To touch a scroll is to feel time itself pulse under your fingertips, a rhythm older than any written history, older than any dynasty or empire that has ruled these lands. Legend holds that these scrolls were created not merely to record knowledge, but to hold a dialogue with the universe. When the ink was first pressed onto the silk, it absorbed the essence of the elements, the wind that brushed the mountains, the fire from the ritual lamps, the water from the sacred rivers, and the earth beneath the monks' feet. Each stroke of the brush was a song, each symbol a note in a symphony that spanned centuries. And in moments of ritual, when the moon was full and the valley was quiet, the scrolls would awaken. Their symbols would glow faintly, shimmering like liquid silver, and those who gazed upon them could hear faint whispers, echoes of the ancient Taoists themselves, their voices rising through time. It is said that the scrolls possess a strange relationship with destruction. Light a fire near them, and the flames lick the silk without consuming it, curling harmlessly around the edges, as though respecting the sanctity of the words. Submerge them in water, however, and they begin to unravel, the ink dissolving into the liquid, swirling into patterns that seem to tell stories before vanishing entirely. Some monks claim this is not destruction but transformation, a reminder that knowledge and wisdom are not static, that they must flow and change with the world, just as water flows around stones and through valleys. Travelers who have ventured into the secluded temples where these scrolls are kept describe an atmosphere unlike any other. The air is dense with incense, the smell of aged wood, and a faint tang of minerals from the nearby rivers. Light filters through paper windows, soft and diffused, creating shifting shadows that play across the walls. And amidst all this, the scrolls hum. A faint, almost imperceptible vibration runs through the room, brushing against the skin like a whisper. Some say the sound is a song of the universe itself, a melody that can guide the mind, calm the heart, or stir visions long hidden within the soul. The monks guard the scrolls jealously, aware that the world outside has little understanding of such power. Many tales circulate about those who tried to remove a scroll from its sanctuary. Driven by curiosity or greed, they returned changed, or sometimes, not at all. Stories speak of visions so vivid that the mind could not reconcile them with reality, of rivers running backward, of mountains melting into clouds, of conversations with beings who existed beyond the comprehension of human senses. The scrolls, it seems, are not meant merely to be read. They are meant to be experienced, to be understood not with the eyes alone, but with the heart, the mind, and something deeper, something that brushes against the infinite. Throughout history, the scrolls have survived emperors, wars, and natural disasters. Fires that reduced entire temples to ashes left them untouched, their edges curling but never consumed. Floods that drowned villages barely reached them. And yet, despite their resilience, they remain fragile in the wrong hands. Scholars and monks alike emphasize that these scrolls are alive in a way that few can understand, sensitive to the intentions of those around them. The energy with which one approaches them, whether of reverence, curiosity, or greed, can shape what the scroll reveals, and sometimes what it conceals. The symbols etched into the silk are themselves a mystery. Some resemble characters long lost to the tides of history, others are abstract, forming intricate geometric patterns that seem to pulse with an internal logic. Attempts to translate or catalog them have often failed, for the scrolls resist static interpretation. They are not fixed, like stone carvings or inscriptions on walls. They are fluid, adaptive, almost sentient. A monk will tell you that the scrolls know who reads them, and they respond in ways both subtle and profound, offering insights, challenges, or visions depending on the reader's inner state. It is in the quiet moments, when the wind is still and the valley holds its breath, that the true power of the scrolls becomes apparent. One can see the ink shimmer, feel the energy in the room, and sometimes glimpses of the past or future flicker before the eyes like images reflected in water. Some visitors speak of glimpsing the formation of entire cities, the rise and fall of dynasties, or the secret lives of people who once walked the temples centuries ago. Others report sensations of deep peace, a sense of alignment with the universe, or sudden bursts of inspiration that linger long after the scroll is rolled back into its protective case. The Taoist scrolls are not merely objects of curiosity or relics of a bygone era. They are a bridge, a conduit between the material world and the intangible, between the human mind and the rhythms of the cosmos. To hold one is to acknowledge the fragility of life, the impermanence of all things, and the enduring beauty of knowledge passed through generations, not as static text but as living, breathing energy. Some mornings, when the valley is shrouded in mist and the rivers barely murmur, the scrolls seem to hum in anticipation. A single drop of water from the ceiling, a breeze through the open window, or the careful movement of a hand can awaken their latent energy, and when they awaken, the room transforms, shadows stretch and twist, the air vibrates with invisible music, and the past and present intermingle so seamlessly that one cannot tell where history ends and reality begins. Those who have witnessed the scrolls in such moments often speak in reverent tones, describing experiences that blend awe, fear, and profound insight. They return to the world outside, changed, carrying fragments of the wisdom, echoes of the visions, and a sense of connection to something immeasurably larger than themselves. And though they may never fully understand the scrolls, they know that some secrets are meant to be approached not with intellect alone, but with humility, patience, and reverence. Through centuries of dynasties, conquests, and change, the Taoist scrolls endure, their messages alive, their energy persistent, their stories incomplete yet infinite. They remind us that knowledge is not simply what is written, but what is felt, what is experienced, and what resonates in the quiet spaces between thought and reality. And perhaps if one listens closely, in the hush of dawn or the stillness of a moonlit night, one can hear the scrolls whisper, not as mere ink on silk, but as a living testament to the enduring power of human curiosity, devotion, and the eternal mysteries of the universe. The scrolls burn in water, resist flame, and endure the ages, yet their truest form remains invisible. A song, a vibration, a living memory carried across centuries, waiting patiently for those who are ready to hear it. The throne that refused a king. Beneath the red sun that rises each morning over the forests of West Africa, where the earth is as red as ochre and the air hums with the layered voices of drums, there lies a city that was once said to be carved by the hands of gods and guarded by bronze that would never rust. The city of Benin, capital of a kingdom whose walls stretched farther than the eye could measure, whose moats cut deeper than invaders could cross, and whose heart was filled with the endless thrum of ritual, rhythm, and rule. Among the treasures of this city, among the ivories carved like frozen rivers and the bronzes that spoke like metal songs, there was a throne. It was no ordinary throne of wood or woven reed. It was cast in bronze, forged in fire by the hands of master casters of the guild, cooled into a shape that was meant to hold kings, and yet, so the people whispered, it refused. They said it was not only a seat, but a spirit, that it drank the sweat of those who dared sit upon it, that it measured the weight of their souls as much as their bodies, and that some it accepted, and some it rejected. Those who were unworthy, the stories claim, felt the bronze grow unbearably hot beneath them, forcing them to rise, their legs trembling, their authority slipping away before they could even speak a word of command. And so, the throne of Benin became a mystery, a paradox, a king's throne that would not accept a king. The bronze throne was said to have been cast in the time when the Oba, the sacred king of Benin, still held not only the power of state, but also the bridge between the human and the divine. The Oba was no mere ruler. He was the living mediator with the gods, the center of ritual, the heart of the people's rhythm, the one whose breath carried rain and whose silence carried famine. To craft a throne for such a figure was not a task of artisans alone, but of ritual, of divination, of offerings to the spirits of metal and fire. For bronze was not an earthly material, not merely alloy and ore, but a medium that the people of Benin believed held memory. Bronze remembered. Bronze carried the essence of those who had touched it, and once it had been cast into form, it could hold those memories forever. And so, the throne was poured in fire, and when it cooled, it shone like the sun after rain. It was decorated with figures in relief. Leopards, the sacred animal of the Oba, guardians of the forest, creatures who walked with power and silence. Around the sides of the throne were motifs of water and wave. For the Oba's ancestors were said to have come from across the waters, guided by divine destiny, and upon the backrest was cast the image of a great face, neither man nor spirit, but both at once, a watcher who would see whoever dared sit upon the seat. It was a throne not meant to be empty, but neither would it allow itself to be filled by just anyone. In the centuries of Benin's rule, when the marketplace bustled with coral beads, ivory tusks, pepper and cloth, when the courtyards filled with dancers whose feet beat dust into rhythm, and the shrines glowed with oil lamps, the throne waited. It was placed within the palace, in a chamber where only the most sacred rituals could take place, where the bronze plaques upon the walls gleamed with the stories of past Obas, each one immortalized in metal. Yet, as time passed, the people began to murmur that the throne had grown restless. When an Oba approached, the throne sometimes shone, welcoming. At other times it seemed dull, cold, as though it had withdrawn its spirit. The priests said it was testing. The throne was no ordinary seat. It was an oracle of sorts, one that decided for itself whether the Oba was worthy of sitting. And when an Oba sat and felt the bronze beneath him soften, or pulse like a heartbeat, he knew he was accepted. But when one sat and the air grew dry, when the bronze seemed to burn or freeze, that Oba knew his reign would be short, or that spirits opposed his rule. The stories multiplied. One spoke of an Oba who, upon taking the throne for the first time, felt it sear his skin. He did not cry out, but he carried the marks upon his thighs for the rest of his reign. He ruled with fear, for he knew the throne itself had cursed him. Another story tells of a young prince who tried to sit upon it before his father's death, eager to feel the power of kingship. The moment he sat, the throne shifted beneath him, and he fell to the floor in shame. His father, it was said, died soon after. But the throne never accepted the prince as king, and so the throne earned its name, the throne that refused a king. Was it truly bronze and metal, reacting to the heat of bodies and the damp of the air, or was it spirit, infused by centuries of offerings, sacrifices, chants and blood, spilled in the name of the gods of Benin? To sit upon it was not only to be enthroned but to be judged. The throne too was caught in the tides of history. In 1897, when British soldiers stormed Benin in what came to be known as the Punitive Expedition, the palace burned. Fire roared through the courtyards, ivory cracked, coral beads scattered into ash. Bronze plaques were ripped from the walls and carried away as spoils of war. The throne too was taken, but stories say that even in foreign lands, it seemed to resist. In private collections it tarnished faster than other bronzes, as if sulking. In museums, it seemed to draw unease from visitors, as though they sensed it was not only an object, but a presence. And in Benin itself, the people never forgot. They said the throne was waiting, still refusing, still remembering the weight of those who had tried to claim it. For the spirit of Benin, after all, was not destroyed. The walls may have been broken, the bronzes scattered, but memory, like bronze, endures. The throne's legend remained alive in whispers, in stories told at dusk when the drums softened and the fires burned low. Parents told their children of the throne that could decide the fate of kings. Elders spoke of it in the marketplace, their voices low, their eyes glancing toward the ruins of the old palace. And the people wondered, if the throne were ever returned, would it still refuse? Would it still burn the unworthy and embrace only those whose spirit matched the pulse of Benin's gods? Some even whispered more eerie tales, that the throne was not empty at all, that when no king sat upon it, it was not vacant, but filled with shadows, occupied by spirits who refused to leave. That at night, in the silence of the ruined palace, one could hear a faint hum, like metal vibrating, like bronze remembering voices long gone. And that if you pressed your ear to the cold air above the throne, you might hear words in a language no longer spoken, a tongue of kings and spirits both. Even now, when people speak of Benin's treasures, and of the bronzes scattered across the world, the throne holds a place of fear and fascination. It is not merely an artifact, it is a question, cast in metal, waiting for an answer. And so it waits still, the throne that refused a king. The coin that bought nothing. They say that coins are made to be exchanged, passed hand to hand, carrying with them the weight of promises and the sound of trade. But in the shadows of ancient Rome there existed a coin that seemed to travel differently. It did not jingle with fortune, nor find its way into bread, wine, or wool. It was pressed into darkness, sealed with words not of prosperity, but of vengeance, and bound to lead not to wealth, but to silence. It was the coin that bought nothing. A coin laid beside curses written in trembling hands, lowered into wells, graves, and temples, carrying wishes not for joy but for ruin. Its story is whispered through fragments of lead tablets, inscribed with desperate words, found buried in Italy and beyond. And in the ruins where these tablets were uncovered, the coin sat still, a mute witness to the prayers that turned to shadows. Imagine Rome in its full thrum, market stalls spill with figs, honey, and amphorae of oil. The chatter of haggling crowds, the laughter of children chasing each other between columns, the sharp shouts of money changers counting sesterces and denarii as they pass through calloused fingers. Coins clink against one another in purses and pottery jars, their edges worn smooth by touch. For most, this was the sound of life, transactions, agreements, survival, but somewhere behind the bustle, in dim workshops and hidden courtyards, there were those who looked at a coin differently. To them, a coin could carry a message, could be given to the dead, or could be cast into shadows as part of a curse. Its value was not in what it could buy, but in what it could call forth. In the soil of Italy, archaeologists uncovered such a coin, pressed against a lead tablet inscribed with words still sharp, though centuries had passed. The inscription was jagged and hurried, not the clean cut of monumental lettering, but the scratching of anger, of longing, of betrayal. The Latin words etched into the tablet spoke of a name, perhaps an enemy, perhaps a rival, and demanded that the gods of the underworld drag them down, bind their tongue, spoil their fortunes. And beside it, the coin, not offered to Jupiter in shining temples, not spent in markets, not gifted to children, but instead imprisoned in the earth, as if it had been handed to the gods themselves, a payment to demons rather than to men. The coin that bought nothing bought a wish, a plea, a curse. It was never returned. Picture the scene centuries ago. A woman, cloaked and watchful, slips into the night. She carries with her a small object wrapped in cloth. It is not bread, not oil, but a thin sheet of lead, folded like a letter no one is meant to open. On it, she has written words bitter and sharp. Perhaps she was wronged by a lover. Perhaps her rival prospered too much. Perhaps she had lost everything, and demanded that someone else feel the same loss. She takes the tablet to a well, where water breathes cool and endless. She whispers her words again, and lowers the tablet, weighted by a coin. The coin sinks, the tablet sinks, and the darkness swallows them both. To her, this is not superstition, this is action, this is the currency of desperation. Centuries later, we find them. Coins fused to tablets. Words that should have faded are still legible. Names, dates, even careful instructions to the gods of the underworld. Blind him, silence her, bind their hands, turn their love sour. These were not prayers for rain or harvest. These were knives etched in lead, and the coin was the seal, the token that said this message was not just a thought but a transaction, paid for in metal, entrusted to the unseen. What fascinates historians is how common these curse tablets were. Across Italy and the Roman world, thousands have been discovered, tucked under thresholds, buried in graves, hidden in sanctuaries. They were not the tools of emperors but of ordinary people. Soldiers cursed rivals for promotions. Lovers cursed those who stole affection. Merchants cursed competitors who thrived while their own stalls remained empty. And again the coin appears. Sometimes just a small bronze coin, sometimes silver, but always the same role: to weigh down the curse, to make it tangible, to give it force. A coin that bought nothing, yet in the mind of the one who cast it, purchased everything they desired in secret. The superstition was simple but powerful. The coin was thought to be an offering, a payment to the gods or spirits of the underworld. If one expected the dead or the divine to act on their behalf, surely they must be paid. Just as the living demanded coin for work, so too might the shades of the dead demand it for carrying out vengeance. To withhold coin was to risk your curse being ignored. To offer it was to seal the pact. And so coins fell not only into the hands of the living, but into the hands of the forgotten, slipped into wells, buried beneath the dust of shrines, and scattered among graves. Imagine again the bustling life of Rome. You are walking through a crowded street, and you see a man pause by a fountain. He looks about, then drops something small into the water. A coin, perhaps. But you notice, if you look close, that it was not a clean offering to the gods above. He mumbles words under his breath. Words he dares not say loudly. He walks away quickly, leaving the coin to rest in silence. It is there still, centuries later, when archaeologists drain the fountain's cracked stone and find it pressed against lead, etched with curses. The coin was not meant to buy bread, it was meant to buy ruin. There is something unsettling about the permanence of these curses. Unlike words spoken into the air, these were written, preserved, folded, buried. They endure, even when the people who wrote them are long gone. We may never know if their wishes came true, if their rivals suffered, if the gods answered, but we know they believed, because they paid. The coin was proof of belief, proof that someone thought vengeance could be bought, proof that hope, twisted into anger, was heavy enough to sink to the bottom of a well. The coin that bought nothing has a strange silence about it. To hold it now is to feel the chill of a transaction never completed. The curse tablet is clear, the words sharp, but there is no proof the spirits ever carried out the request. Perhaps the coin did nothing, perhaps it was never delivered, perhaps the gods ignored it, and yet the person who cast it believed enough to part with metal, to give away something that could have been used in life. That is the power of desperation. It spends freely where reason would hesitate. As you listen, imagine the thousands of these coins that must still lie beneath the soil of Italy and the wider Roman world, bound to curses that no one remembers. Their names erased, their anger unfulfilled, but their words still sleeping on folded lid. The coins rest there too, countless coins that never returned to circulation, coins that never bought wine, never bought wool, never bought bread. They sit in silence, waiting. To find them is to hear whispers from 2,000 years ago, voices that would not speak openly, but chose instead to scratch their secrets in the language of the dead. And so the coin that bought nothing reminds us that history is not only built on monuments and emperors, but on the small, desperate acts of ordinary people. In every curse tablet, in every coin laid beside them, we see hands trembling with anger, with sorrow, with jealousy. We see the shadows of a world that believed words, when bound to metal, could bend the unseen. We see the strange trade of Rome, not only in goods but in vengeance. The coin that bought nothing, bought silence, bought darkness, bought a story that would wait centuries to be uncovered. And when you look at it now, dull with age, pressed against a folded sheet of lead still bearing sharp words, you understand, sometimes the most powerful currency is not what you can spend, but what you are willing to give away, in hope of changing a fate that never listens. The coin remains, the curses remain, but they bought nothing, nothing but echoes. The arrow that never landed. It begins with silence, the kind of silence that follows violence. On the plains of ancient Persia, where dust gathers and wind pulls long whispers across the earth, archaeologists uncovered an arrowhead, unlike the others. It was not bent from impact, nor dulled from striking shield or bone. It sat in the soil as though it had never touched its target, as though it had hung suspended between air and earth for 2,000 years. They called it an arrow that never landed. A fragment of war that seemed trapped in time, a memory frozen in bronze and iron. To hold it was to hold a paradox, an object made only for flight and impact, yet found resting as though it had never completed its purpose. The Parthians were masters of the bow. They were horsemen who turned the desert into a weapon, who learned to ride at full gallop and loose arrows backwards, striking pursuers with deadly accuracy. To their enemies, the Parthian shot was not only a tactic but a nightmare. Roman legions, drilled to fight in squares and lines, could do little against riders who vanished into dust, only to send volleys of arrows from impossible angles. And yet, here lies an arrowhead that tells a different story. An arrow that never cut through flesh, never splintered wood, never shattered against stone. Instead, it remained untouched, its purpose incomplete, as though the sky itself refused to let it fall. Imagine the battlefields of that time. The clash of Rome and Parthia, the endless struggle for Mesopotamia, the contested lands between Euphrates and Tigris. Dust rising, shields locked, cavalry sweeping in arcs that carved the desert into shifting shapes. Arrows darkening the sky, thousands at once, a storm of iron and fire, and among them, one arrow released but never landing. Did its archer fall before it struck? Did the bowstring snap mid-flight? Or did it leave the bow only to vanish from its path, lodged not in a man or a shield, but in the very folds of time itself? The Parthian arrowhead whispers these questions without ever answering, its silence heavier than its weight. The arrowhead itself is small, almost unassuming. Bronze darkened with centuries, edges worn but not blunted. Unlike broken points retrieved from battlefield graves, this one bears no fracture. It is complete, as if it waited for the rest of the arrow to be reattached and sent again. But there is no shaft, no feathers, only the head, preserved where it was lost. In museums it sits quietly under glass, a relic of violence that looks almost peaceful. Children walk past without noticing. Scholars lean close, wondering why this one survived unmarked. But the object seems to resist explanation. It is an arrowhead that escaped its own fate. In stories, such objects are never mere accidents. In the myths of warriors, an arrow that never landed could only belong to the gods. Think of Apollo, the archer god, loosing arrows of plague that struck without sound. Think of Artemis, whose arrows silenced with divine precision. Among the Persians, Mithra was said to ride in chariots of light, his arrows unerring, unseen. Could this arrowhead have belonged to a weapon meant not for mortal flesh, but for sacrifice or ritual, loosed in ceremony rather than in war? Was it aimed at the sky, never meant to return? Or was it buried as an offering, arrow not as weapon, but as message, shot into earth as one would cast a prayer into fire? The Parthian Empire itself was a thing of shifting sands. Born from nomadic horsemen who learned to rule, it stretched across Iran, Iraq, Armenia, and parts of Central Asia, defying Rome at its height. To Rome, they were shadows on the horizon, unconquered, elusive. To their own people, they were kings descended from horse and bow, sovereigns whose power was measured not in marble, but in mobility. They built cities, yes, but it was their arrows that Rome remembered. At Carrhae in 53 BCE, Crassus, the Roman triumvir, led his legions east, dreaming of conquest. He returned not in triumph but in death, his legions shattered by Parthian horse archers. Roman shields bristled with arrows, soldiers collapsed under relentless volleys, and somewhere, perhaps in that very battle, an arrow was loosed but never landed, destined instead to fall into soil and sleep for centuries. Imagine the scene: a Parthian archer, light armor glittering, reins wrapped in one hand, bow bent in the other. He turns his body, looses the string, and the arrow leaps forward. But in that same breath, he himself is struck. The arrow, freed, loses its strength. It drifts, it falls, it vanishes into the sand before it can claim a victim. Time swallows it. The archer falls, forgotten, while his weapon remains, a fragment of intent suspended forever. When we find the arrowhead centuries later, we find not only iron but intention, the unfinished action of a man whose name is gone, whose body has turned to dust, but whose arrow still waits for the impact that never came. And what of the myths told by villagers centuries after, when such arrowheads were plowed up from fields, or found lodged in stone? In Iran, people believed in stones that fell from the sky, gifts of gods, talismans of protection. Could not an arrowhead be the same? A gift of warriors past, fallen not from bough but from heaven? To hold it was to hold a fragment of fire, a shard of lightning turned solid. Farmers would wear such pieces as charms, believing them to bring strength, protection from spirits, favor in hunts. An arrowhead that never landed could not be defeated, for it belonged to no man. It belonged to eternity. Archaeologists study its metallurgy, its shape. The Parthian arrowhead was often triangular, barbed, designed to lodge deep and resist removal. This one is sharp, precise, deadly still, and yet it is clean. It has not pierced armor or bone. Its story is all potential, and no aftermath. In that it carries more mystery than 1,000 broken blades. For weapons once used are marked forever, but weapons that wait, they hum with possibility. The arrowhead that never landed waits still, as though if one placed it upon a shaft, tied feathers, and bent the bowstring, it would continue its journey, completing what was once interrupted. In whispers of folklore, there are always weapons that fail to strike, arrows that turn aside. Some say they are guided by divine hands, sparing the one who was meant to die. Imagine a Roman officer, shield raised, seeing the arrow streak toward him, only for it to vanish into dust, never striking. He lives, though he cannot explain why. Later he returns home, tells his family of the arrow that should have ended him, but did not. They call it luck. They call it providence. But perhaps the arrowhead we hold today was that very arrow, the one that spared a man who should have fallen. There is another possibility. What if the arrowhead was never meant for war at all? Across the ancient Near East, arrowheads were left in graves, buried with the dead as offerings. They were tokens of strength, weapons for the journey into the afterlife. A warrior buried with his arrows could defend himself in the shadow world. A child might be given one to protect them from spirits. Perhaps this arrowhead was placed deliberately in soil not of battle, but of ritual, not shot, but set, and so it never landed, because it was never meant to fly. Its journey was spiritual, not martial. Its target was unseen. When you look at it in the glass case of a museum, it seems almost to lean forward, waiting. It has a restlessness about it. Its weight is nothing, its sharpness dulled, but its presence lingers. Visitors pass by quickly, their eyes caught by larger objects, helmets, statues, shields. Few linger at the small triangle of bronze. Yet for those who do, there is something magnetic. This was once potential violence, now it is silent. But silence, too, can be heavy. To think of all the arrows that did land, the screams they drew, the wounds they made, and to think of this one suspended forever is to think of fate in strange terms. Was it spared? Or did it spare? Was it luck? Or was it failure? It lies between categories, and in that in-betweenness, it becomes legend. The arrow that never landed could be every arrow, could be every spared life, every breath taken when one was nearly lost, and so it endures. Not in epic poems, not in marble carvings, but in soil, in silence, in shadow. The Parthian arrowhead waits in its case, still unlanded, still unfinished. To touch it would be to bridge time, to hold the breath of an archer long gone. And though centuries separate us, the story is clear. Some weapons are meant to strike, others are meant to remain. This one chose the latter. And in that choice, or in that accident, it became more than a weapon. It became a riddle of history. The arrow that never landed reminds us that not all stories end in blood. Some end in silence. The chain that carried prayers. Warelate begins in the quiet, with a place caught between the past and the present, where dust clings to stone walls and the wind moves like a gentle breath through forgotten corridors. In the heart of what was once Constantinople, the city of 1,000 domes and infinite prayers, an object lies in the shadows of time. A chain of bronze, delicate yet unyielding, each link carefully formed, each joint a promise of devotion. They call it the Byzantine prayer chain, a relic not of kings or warriors, but of the countless supplications whispered into the air, carried along this slender sequence of metal, touching stone and hand alike, a vessel for faith and hope that endured long after its makers were gone. The chain itself is simple in appearance. Bronze links, carefully molded, threaded into a sequence long enough to encircle the body if draped, or perhaps to be held in both hands in contemplation. Each link bears faint traces of inscriptions, worn by centuries of touch, by fingers that once clutched them in desperation, in celebration, in silent desperation. This is a chain that carried prayers, not mere symbols, not offerings placed on altars, but the actual weight of human yearning, the energy of whispered hopes and muted fears. To hold it is to hold the collected breaths of generations, their whispered wishes, their silent cries, their unsent letters to the heavens, encoded into bronze with a precision born of devotion. Imagine the Byzantine Empire at its height. Constantinople, resplendent on the Bosphorus, bridges the worlds of East and West, the crossroads of empires and faiths. Marble floors gleam under sunlight that enters through vast domes, mosaics glint with gold that seems almost liquid, the air carries the scent of incense, beeswax, and the sea. In such a city, every street is a hymn, every courtyard a sanctuary, and every prayer finds a vessel in some form. Among the countless relics preserved by priests and artisans, the chain was one of the humblest, yet perhaps the most intimate. Unlike chalices or icons, it was touched, held, felt. Its purpose was not display, but connection. The chain spoke of a bridge between human heart and divine, link by link, a continuous line that could never break without fracturing hope itself. Archaeologists first found the chain in the ruins of a monastery tucked away along the hills overlooking the Golden Horn. The building itself had been abandoned for centuries, walls crumbling, tiles overturned, the scent of damp stone pervasive. Within a collapsed chamber, hidden beneath fallen beams and centuries of dust, the chain lay coiled like a sleeping serpent, untouched by hands for hundreds of years. Its links, surprisingly intact, spoke of the meticulous craftsmanship of Byzantine metalworkers, who understood that devotion could be physical, that prayer could take form. And as they lifted it, brushing away dirt with trembling hands, they sensed immediately that this was not merely an artifact, but a vessel of presence, a conduit of countless intangible energies that had endured far beyond the lifespan of those who first prayed through it. Historians speculate on how it was used. Some suggest it was a rosary-like tool, guiding the fingers through its links as one recited prayers, a tactile rhythm to match the spiritual cadence of devotion. Others believe it may have been part of a ceremonial object, suspended in a church, touched by congregants who passed beneath it, each link transmitting blessings and protective energy. Whatever its exact purpose, one thing is clear: the chain was meant to be carried, to bear the invisible weight of the human soul. It is, in essence, a kind of memory, a tangible archive of prayers, like a library not of books but of silent intentions. Each link is a testament to the people who came before, whose names are lost to time, but whose voices linger in the metal, vibrating faintly to those who know how to listen. Consider the people who might have held it. Monks kneeling before an altar, chanting in unison, the sound rising in the air and pressing down with weightless insistence upon the chain. A mother, worried for her child's health, pressing the links between her palms, murmuring every hope like a secret she cannot share aloud. Soldiers returning from distant campaigns, weary and broken, kneeling in a quiet courtyard, running their fingers over the cool metal, seeking divine protection, absolution, or courage to face another day. Each touch leaves a trace, invisible but potent, an energy accumulated over centuries. And now, centuries later, when we hold it or see it behind glass, we are in some small way touching the echoes of those countless, intertwined lives. The chain also tells a story of endurance. The Byzantine Empire itself, though mighty, eventually fell. Constantinople succumbed to the Ottomans in 1453. A city of gold and prayer taken, the echoes of bells and chants silenced. Many relics were destroyed, others lost to fire and neglect. Yet the chain survived, hidden under rubble, perhaps intentionally concealed, perhaps forgotten, until rediscovered by modern hands. Its survival is almost miraculous, as if it had been protected by the prayers it carried, as though the accumulated devotion itself created a kind of shield against decay and destruction. It is a reminder that faith, once expressed, can outlast empires, kingdoms, and dynasties. Even the metalwork speaks in silent tongues. Bronze links with delicate patterns, some etched with crosses, others with small floral motifs, intertwined in ways that suggest both utility and aesthetic devotion. The craftsmanship implies a culture that valued attention to detail, not merely for display, but as an act of reverence. Each link was formed carefully, welded, smoothed, and polished, ensuring that it could be held without harm, worn without pain, passed from hand to hand without failure. The artisans, though long gone, left behind not only their skill but their intent, that this object would endure, that it would serve as a vessel, that it would carry prayers beyond the reach of time. But perhaps what is most haunting about the chain is its silence. Unlike a bell or a voice, it does not speak in sound, it does not declare its purpose, it waits, it carries, it exists. And in that waiting, it becomes something more than a relic. It is a reminder that devotion is not always loud, that the power of prayer does not need an audience, that the energy of human hope can persist even when all else has crumbled. When one holds the chain, one becomes aware of a strange continuity, a line connecting the first whisper to the present moment. It is as if the very air around it hums softly with centuries of unsent words, unrecorded wishes, and unseen tears. To study the chain is to study human intention itself. Modern scientists can analyze the metal, date the alloy, even determine the region in which it was made, but no chemical test can measure the prayers it carried, the energy it absorbed, or the subtle shifts it may have created in the lives of those who touched it. Scholars write of devotion, but often speak in generalities: piety, faith, ritual. The chain challenges these abstractions. It is not just a symbol, it is a participant in devotion, an active vessel, a silent partner in human longing. It bears witness without judgment, records without ink, preserves without writing. And perhaps that is why it resonates, centuries later, with the quiet intensity of something alive, something almost sentient. The chain's journey does not end in the museum. Even now replicas are made, copies given to scholars, believers, and collectors, but the original retains its weight, its aura, its accumulated presence. There are stories of those who have touched it experiencing an almost overwhelming sense of continuity, a connection to lives long gone, a deep, inexplicable calm. Some speak of visions, fleeting images of hands holding the links, of churches lit by candlelight, of voices whispering from centuries past. Whether these are true or the product of imagination matters little. The chain carries its history in a way that words cannot fully capture. It is a testament to the endurance of faith and intention. Empires rise and fall, cities are destroyed and rebuilt, dynasties vanish, but the human desire to reach beyond oneself persists. The Byzantine prayer chain embodies this persistence. It is a bridge across time, a link between generations, a reminder that even in the most mundane or difficult moments, humans have sought connection with something larger, something eternal. It is a chain that literally carries the weight of centuries of human hope, a silent chronicle of devotion, a relic that asks only to be held, to be acknowledged, and in that acknowledgement, to fulfill its centuries-old purpose. In silence, it teaches patience. In weight, it teaches humility. In form, it teaches the artistry of faith. The chain waits not for display, not for recognition, but for the simple act of human touch, the fleeting moment when intention meets form, and prayer is passed from soul to bronze and back again. And though we may never know all who held it, all who prayed through it, all who whispered their lives into its links, we can feel the continuation, the unbroken line that stretches from Constantinople to the present, linking us, even for a moment, to a time and a place and a devotion far greater than any individual life. The Byzantine prayer chain is more than a chain. It is a silent witness, a carrier of centuries, a conduit between mortal and divine. It asks nothing, and yet gives everything: presence, continuity, connection, and a reminder that the simplest objects can bear the heaviest truths. To look at it, to hold it, to imagine it in the hands of countless people across time, is to feel the pulse of history, the quiet heartbeat of devotion that has endured, unwavering, unbroken, and unending. And in that realization we see why some relics are timeless, not because of their material, or their beauty, or their place in history, but because they carried something intangible, something human, something eternal. The chain that carried prayers is one of those relics, and in its quiet, unassuming way, it continues to teach, to connect, and to inspire, centuries after it was first formed, and long after the voices who prayed through it have been silenced by the passage of time. The harp that silenced voices. In the mist-laden hills of Ireland, where the wind sweeps across green pastures and ancient stones mark the passage of centuries, there exists an artifact of profound resonance and quiet mystery. It is a harp, not merely an instrument, but a vessel of stories, of music, and of power that has passed through time, carrying whispers from the past into the present. Known as Brian Boru's harp, it rests today in silent dignity, yet it hums with echoes of kings, poets, and battles fought in both the physical and spiritual realms. To gaze upon it is to peer into a continuum of Irish history, legend, and devotion, where each string holds not just notes but centuries of voices now hushed by its solemn presence. The harp itself is an object of delicate craftsmanship and imposing significance. Its frame is carved from ancient oak, strong and resilient, yet imbued with a grace that speaks of artistry rather than mere utility. The soundboard bears intricate designs, Celtic knots intertwining in endless loops, as if capturing the eternal cycle of life, death, and memory. Its strings, once plucked to summon melodies, vibrate in ways that seem to linger long after the sound has faded, carrying the weight of centuries and the ghostly resonance of voices long silenced. The instrument was more than decoration or entertainment. It was a symbol of authority, a conduit of cultural identity, and as legend tells, a harbinger of silence when wielded in the right hands. Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland, is said to have possessed this harp, or at least a predecessor to it, and with it, he commanded more than armies. He commanded attention, reverence, and perhaps even fear. The harp was not merely played, it was invoked. Musicians, poets, and bards gathered around it, their voices merging with its music, creating an atmosphere where words and notes became inseparable. It is said that in times of unrest, the harp could quiet a room, silencing dissent and focusing the minds of all who heard it. Whether by mystical properties or the sheer force of cultural power, the harp held sway over hearts and minds alike. Consider the Ireland of Brian Boru's time, a land of fragmented kingdoms, rugged landscapes, and a people bound by tradition, kinship, and lore. In this world, music was not mere amusement, it was law, history, and prophecy intertwined. Bards and harpists were revered, their songs preserved genealogies, recorded victories and defeats, and communicated messages that could traverse distances greater than a messenger could travel. The harp, therefore, was not merely an instrument, but an archive of culture, a living document encoded in wood, strings, and sound. Every note plucked, every chord struck, carried intention and meaning, weaving together the social, political, and spiritual fabric of the time. It is said that the harp could silence voices in the most literal sense. When played before assemblies or gatherings, even the most stubborn or vocal dissenters found themselves overcome with a kind of awe. Their objections muted, their arguments lost in the profound resonance of its music. Scholars debate whether this effect was supernatural, psychological, or symbolic, but those who study Irish history cannot ignore the stories that have endured. The harp was a tool of influence, a repository of authority, and a guardian of cultural memory. Its presence demanded respect, and its sound commanded obedience, in a world where power often lay as much in perception as in force. Over the centuries, the harp traveled through Ireland, surviving invasions, civil strife, and the passage of countless rulers. Each era left its mark, scratches in the wood from hurried movements, the subtle stretching of strings from impromptu performances, the patina of hands that had held it in reverence. During turbulent times, the harp was sometimes hidden, sometimes stolen, and occasionally perhaps forgotten, only to resurface in moments when its presence could once again influence events. Its survival is remarkable, a testament to its significance and the care of those who understood its value, not merely as a musical instrument, but as a vessel of legacy. The stories associated with the harp are as intricate as the carvings on its soundboard. Legends speak of warriors laying down their weapons upon hearing its first notes, of councils reached in minutes that had previously been mired in days of argument. Some tales suggest that the harp's sound could summon spirits of the past, allowing the living to hear guidance from ancestors or fallen kings. The very notion of silenced voices does not imply oppression, but rather a kind of transformation. Voices were not erased, but absorbed into the resonance of the harp, joining the continuum of history that it carried within its strings. As we consider the harp today, it is no longer played in the courts of kings or the great halls of Ireland, but it continues to hold power, though of a different kind. Scholars, musicians, and enthusiasts gaze upon it in awe, imagining the countless hands that once held it, the innumerable songs that traveled through it, and the immense history encoded within each fiber. Its story is not static. It grows as more people learn of it, study it, and imagine the echoes of its past performances. To touch the harp, to see it up close, is to feel a connection to a time and place that is otherwise inaccessible, a bridge across centuries, linking the present to a vibrant, living past. Its construction is a marvel of artistry and intention. The oak is seasoned, carved with precision, and joined with care, ensuring both resonance and durability. Each string, originally crafted from gut, responds to subtle variations in tension, producing tones that are simultaneously robust and ethereal. The combination of materials, technique, and the cultural knowledge embedded within its design gives the harp a unique voice, one that transcends mere music. It is a vessel for emotion, memory, and collective human experience, a resonator for the intangible. The harp also speaks to the broader human desire to leave a legacy. In a world of fleeting lives, where kings and empires rise and fall, the creation of an object that can carry meaning beyond the lifespan of its maker is a profound act. The harp embodies that impulse, to craft something lasting, to infuse it with purpose, and to allow it to carry human experience across time. In this sense, the silence it produces is not emptiness, but a concentrated expression of accumulated human intention, a pause in which the weight of history can be felt, contemplated, and honored. One can imagine the harp being played in quiet moments of reflection, as well as in grand ceremonies. In a dimly lit hall, candlelight flickering on stone walls, a harpist's fingers glide over the strings, producing notes that weave through the air, filling every corner with sound and silence alike. The music, soft yet insistent, draws the attention of every ear, calming, focusing, and, in its own way, commanding. Even those who would speak out are drawn into the spell of its resonance, their voices naturally falling into harmony with the music, if only temporarily, and in that moment, the harp has done its work. It has silenced not by force, but by the sheer power of artistry and intention. Over time, the harp has been studied and admired, copied and revered, yet nothing truly replaces the original. Replicas capture the appearance and some tonal qualities, but the accumulation of centuries, the weight of history, the touch of countless hands, the absorbed hopes and fears of all who interacted with it cannot be replicated. It is a singular object, a nexus of culture, faith, artistry, and human experience, all interwoven into its structure and its story. And so the harp endures. Though no longer used to command assemblies or influence councils, it carries the same essence that it did when Brian Boru himself may have laid hands upon it. The embodiment of culture, the resonance of history, the power to evoke emotion and contemplation. Its silence is not absence but presence. Its stillness is not void but concentration. The harp is, in essence, a living memory, a continuous thread linking generations through the act of sound and silence, music and contemplation, human effort and divine inspiration. As we contemplate the harp today, we are reminded that objects, when crafted with intention and significance, can transcend their material existence. They carry not just form but meaning, not just sound but resonance, not just history but presence. The harp that silenced voices is one such object, a testament to human creativity, devotion, and the desire to be heard and remembered. In its strings, we hear centuries of Ireland's soul. In its silence, we feel the enduring power of culture, art, and history. And in its existence, we are reminded that some voices, though silenced, continue to speak, if only we are willing to listen. The shoe that walked without feet. High in the craggy, snow-dusted peaks of the Ötztal Alps, where the wind sculpts the ice and whispers carry across jagged stone, a relic of extraordinary endurance and human ingenuity lay hidden for millennia. It is not a sword or a crown, nor a tool of battle or grandeur, but a simple leather shoe, carefully crafted, carefully preserved, yet astonishing in its story. Known today as one of Ötzi the Iceman's shoes, it speaks of survival, resilience, and the quiet ingenuity of humans living in harsh landscapes, and it offers a glimpse into the everyday life of a man who lived more than 5,000 years ago. At first glance, the shoe seems modest. Its exterior, made of leather tanned from carefully selected hide, has weathered centuries of ice, wind, and time. Its stitching, done with animal sinew, is precise and purposeful, designed not merely for comfort, but for endurance against the unforgiving terrain of the Alps. The sole, thick and robust, suggests that it was meant for more than mere walking. It was built for trekking across rocky, uneven paths, for protecting the foot from jagged stones, piercing cold and hidden crevices. Inside, the lining of grass and moss hints at an intuitive understanding of insulation, a method to trap warmth and ensure that the wearer's feet remained functional even in sub-zero temperatures. Ötzi himself, discovered in 1991 by hikers in the Italian-Austrian border region, offers the human connection to this artifact. The shoe, along with his clothing and tools, forms a complete narrative of daily survival in the Copper Age. Each component reflects an intricate knowledge of materials, environment, and bodily needs. The shoes, in particular, reveal how our ancestors solved problems we still consider today. The need to stay warm, to remain mobile, and to endure harsh conditions with limited resources. In this way, the shoe is not just a relic, it is a testament to human adaptability and creativity. The design of the shoe is remarkable in its simplicity and effectiveness. Its base is a sturdy leather sole, providing durability and resistance to sharp stones and ice. The upper is constructed from multiple pieces of leather, carefully overlapped and stitched, forming a snug enclosure for the foot. The interior is layered with grass and other natural fibers, acting as insulation and cushioning, ensuring that even after long treks over unforgiving terrain, the foot would remain protected and warm. The shoe is secured with leather thongs that wrap around the ankle, keeping it firmly in place. Every aspect of the shoe's construction demonstrates thoughtful engineering, a combination of observation, experience, and careful craftsmanship. In the context of Ötzi's life, the shoe becomes even more extraordinary. Living in the Alps during the Copper Age, he faced dangers and challenges that would test even the most resilient human spirit. Ice, snow, and wind were constant companions. Wildlife and the risk of injury were ever present. Navigation across steep cliffs and treacherous passes demanded skill and caution. Yet this shoe, humble in appearance, enabled him to traverse these landscapes with a degree of safety and confidence, converting natural materials into a tool of mobility and survival. It carried him across glaciers, through valleys, and over ridges, silently performing its function while remaining largely invisible to those who later discovered it frozen in ice. The preservation of the shoe is equally remarkable. Encased in glacial ice for thousands of years, it survived with its structure largely intact, giving modern scientists unparalleled insight into the daily life of a Copper Age individual. The leather, once supple and flexible, hardened over time but retained the evidence of stitching, wear patterns, and structural ingenuity. The grass lining preserved its shape and provided evidence of practical insulation methods. Modern analysis reveals not only the materials used, but also the methods of tanning and preparation, providing a window into technological knowledge that predates written history. Beyond its technical aspects, the shoe speaks to the universality of human experience. It is an artifact of daily life, yet it carries profound meaning. It reminds us that survival, comfort, and ingenuity are not modern concerns. They are as ancient as humanity itself. The challenges faced by Ötzi mirror those faced by countless generations: the need to adapt to one's environment, to create tools and clothing that support life, and to navigate a world full of unpredictability and risk. In this way, the shoe transcends its physical form. It becomes a symbol of resilience, an emblem of human persistence across time. Every crease and wear mark on the shoe tells a story. The pressure points on the sole suggest habitual movements, perhaps long treks across glaciers or cautious steps along rocky ridges. The fraying of leather in specific areas hints at repeated use, moments when the shoe bent and flexed to accommodate human motion. The grass lining may bear microscopic evidence of plant species gathered for insulation, offering insight into the environmental knowledge of Ötzi's time. These details, though subtle, collectively provide a rich tapestry of information about life in a harsh, unforgiving landscape and the ingenuity required to survive. The shoe also invites reflection on the relationship between humans and their environment. It demonstrates a keen observation of natural materials, an understanding of insulation, and the ability to repurpose resources in functional ways. In a time without modern synthetics or industrial manufacturing, survival depended on careful attention to the environment, trial and error, and passing knowledge from one generation to the next. The shoe, therefore, is more than footwear. It is a testament to the application of practical science, intuition, and creativity in human history. Consider the journey that led the shoe to the glacier where it was ultimately discovered. Ötzi, wearing the shoes, navigated trails that today seem perilous, crossing altitudes and encountering weather extremes that would challenge even the most prepared modern traveler. Each step taken in these shoes was a negotiation with the terrain, a dialogue between human ingenuity and natural obstacles. And yet, despite these challenges, the shoes performed their task. They supported, insulated, and enabled movement, quietly fulfilling their purpose while remaining unremarkable to the wearer. In this unassuming effectiveness lies their brilliance. The shoes did not call attention to themselves, yet they ensured survival in one of the harshest environments imaginable. As we study the shoes today, modern technology allows us to analyze materials, construction methods, and wear patterns in extraordinary detail. Microscopic examination reveals plant fibers, traces of animal hair, and the structure of leather tanning. Reconstruction experiments demonstrate how such shoes could endure long treks in extreme cold, and simulations allow us to understand the efficiency of their insulation and mobility. Yet, beyond these scientific insights, the shoes retain a profound human quality. They connect us to a man who lived over 5,000 years ago, whose daily life, decisions, and survival strategies are preserved in these remarkable artifacts. The shoes also provoke contemplation about the passage of time and the endurance of human ingenuity. While civilizations have risen and fallen, technologies have advanced, and landscapes have shifted, the fundamental challenges of surviving in harsh environments remain. Ochi's shoes are a reminder that human creativity has long been capable of solving practical problems, often in ways that are elegant, sustainable, and deeply attuned to the natural world. They carry lessons not only about the past but about resilience, adaptability, and the subtle intelligence required to thrive under demanding conditions. Even the aesthetic qualities of the shoes invite admiration. The careful stitching, the symmetry of construction, and the integration of natural materials reflect an aesthetic sensibility intertwined with functionality. Beauty and utility coexist, not as separate concerns but as complementary aspects of survival craftsmanship. The shoes, though utilitarian, embody principles of design that continue to resonate with modern observers: elegance in simplicity, intelligence in construction, and harmony with the environment. In contemplating the shoe, one is reminded of the quiet dignity of everyday objects in human history. While much attention is often given to monumental achievements, temples, weapons, or treasures, the humble, practical artifacts carry an equally compelling story. They reveal the lived experiences of ordinary individuals, their ingenuity, their struggles, and their triumphs over circumstance. Ochi's shoe, small and unassuming, encapsulates the essence of survival, the application of knowledge, and the enduring human spirit. The story of the shoe is also a story of discovery and modern fascination. Its unearthing, along with Ochi's body and accompanying artifacts, reshaped our understanding of the Copper Age, offering unprecedented insight into the life, diet, clothing, and technologies of prehistoric humans in alpine environments. The shoes, preserved in ice, allow us to step metaphorically into Ochi's world, to trace the steps of a man navigating glaciers, valleys, and forests thousands of years ago. In doing so, they connect us across time, reminding us of shared human challenges, resourcefulness, and the drive to endure. As we imagine Ochi wearing these shoes, trekking through the mountains, we are invited into his world. The cold bite of alpine winds, the crunch of snow beneath his feet, the careful navigation of rocks and ridges, all these sensations were mediated by the simple, brilliant construction of his footwear. Each step was supported, each stride cushioned, and each mile endured with the quiet reliability of leather, sinew, and grass. The shoes, in their silent efficacy, become partners in survival, embodying a profound and intimate relationship between human and environment. Ultimately, the shoes remind us of the deep intelligence embedded in everyday objects. They are artifacts of survival, yes, but they are also stories, bridges across millennia, and testimonies to the ingenuity of our ancestors. They speak not with grandiose claims or extravagant displays, but with quiet competence, subtle beauty, and enduring relevance. They invite us to listen carefully, to observe, and to appreciate the profound wisdom in the ordinary, the overlooked, and the practical. The shoes endure, preserved in museums and in the imagination, carrying the footsteps of a man who walked mountains and valleys thousands of years ago. In each stitch, in each piece of leather, we glimpse not just the past but the continuity of human experience, the challenge of survival, the intelligence of design, and the timeless quest for comfort, mobility, and resilience. They remind us that even in the harshest conditions, human creativity and determination can fashion tools that endure, tools that carry not just physical function, but the stories, intentions, and spirit of those who made and used them. In the end, the shoe that walked without feet is more than an artifact. It is a symbol of the human journey, a testament to adaptation, endurance, and the intimate bond between humans and the natural world. It whispers across millennia, inviting reflection, admiration, and awe. Its legacy is silent yet profound, simple yet astonishing. And in contemplating this modest piece of leather, lined with grass and carefully stitched, we come to understand the extraordinary within the ordinary, the ingenuity within simplicity, and the enduring power of human creativity preserved in the cold, quiet heart of the Alps. The horn that spoke to gods, long before cities spread across the land, before kings and kingdoms carved their influence into the earth. In the rolling plains and dense forests of what we now call Denmark, a sound once echoed that could summon both awe and reverence. It was the voice of a horn, elongated, elegant, and forged from bronze, a musical instrument unlike any other, known today as the lur horn. This artifact speaks of ritual, communication, and the intricate artistry of prehistoric communities, capturing the imagination of anyone who studies its resonant history. At first glance, the lur horn is a marvel of craftsmanship. Its surface, polished bronze that glimmers faintly in light, curves with a graceful elegance, ending in a flaring bell designed to project sound over great distances. The metalwork is seamless, showing that it was crafted with not only technical skill but also aesthetic sensibility. Each lur horn is unique, yet all share common characteristics: long, slender bodies, meticulously hammered bronze walls, and subtle decorative motifs that suggest cultural significance beyond mere functionality. Holding a lure horn, one can almost feel the vibrations of centuries, the echoes of rituals, gatherings, and messages carried across valleys and forests. The horn's purpose was multifaceted. Primarily, it served as a musical instrument used in ceremonies that connected humans with the divine. The sound it produced was not merely for entertainment, it carried symbolic weight. When played, the horn's voice could traverse great distances, summoning community members, announcing sacred events, or invoking the presence of gods. Its tones were deep, sonorous, and lingering, able to penetrate forests and reach across meadows, a bridge between humans and the unseen world of spirits and deities. The context in which the lure horn was used is as fascinating as the instrument itself. Dating back to the Nordic Bronze Age, around 1500 BCE, these horns were integral to ritual life in Denmark and surrounding regions. Communities, organized into small settlements and farming groups, relied on such instruments for both practical and ceremonial purposes. Imagine a misty morning by a fjord, the cool breeze rustling through reeds, and the deep reverberating call of the lure horn announcing the dawn of a sacred festival. Its sound would awaken a sense of connection, of shared purpose, and of reverence for the forces of nature and the divine. The technical ingenuity behind the horn is astounding. Crafted from bronze sheets carefully hammered and joined, the horn's shape is critical to its acoustic properties. The length and flare of the bell amplify its resonance, while the smooth interior ensures that air flows efficiently to produce sustained notes. Archaeologists and acousticians today have marveled at how effectively these ancient artisans were able to manipulate metal and sound, creating instruments that remain impressive even by modern standards. The lure horn, in this sense, is not just a musical device, it is an achievement of applied science, acoustics, and artistry, realized thousands of years before modern manufacturing. Beyond its structural brilliance, the horn embodies cultural and spiritual significance. Many lure horns were found in pairs, suggesting rituals of harmony, duality, or communal participation. The decorative motifs etched into some horns hint at symbolic language, perhaps indicating lineage, spiritual beliefs, or mythological references. Each horn carried meaning, acting as a vessel for cultural transmission, a tool for binding the community together through sound, ceremony, and shared experience. The resonance of the horn was a language of its own, speaking to the gods, to ancestors, and to the people who wielded it. The discovery of these horns in bogs, graves, and ceremonial sites adds another layer of intrigue. Such locations suggest that the horns were considered sacred, worthy of preservation or offering. Bogs, with their preservative acidic waters, captured and conserved the horns for millennia, allowing modern archaeologists to study their form, construction, and purpose. These finds invite reflection on the care and reverence ancient peoples had for their ceremonial instruments, and on the role of music and sound in connecting with the sacred. Consider the experience of holding a lure horn in one's hands. Its weight, the smooth coolness of bronze, and the subtle curves would communicate the skill and intention of its maker. To play it, one would need strength, breath control, and an understanding of its acoustic nature. The sound produced would ripple across the landscape, a deep, almost haunting note that could stir emotion, summon attention, or accompany prayer. For the people of the Nordic Bronze Age, such a sound was likely not ordinary, it was extraordinary, capable of evoking reverence, awe, and perhaps even fear. The horn also invites reflection on the nature of sound and ritual. Sound in these early societies was a tool, a symbol, and a medium. It carried messages, encoded emotions, and connected individuals to the spiritual realm. In the case of the lure horn, the act of producing sound was itself a ritual, a disciplined practice requiring mastery, precision, and intent. The horn's voice did not merely travel through the air, it traveled through consciousness, perception, and community, creating bonds, signaling transitions, and marking sacred occasions. In studying the horn today, modern researchers have attempted to replicate its sound, experimenting with reconstructed instruments. These experiments reveal a haunting, rich timbre capable of sustaining notes for long durations. The horn can produce tones that resonate with deep emotional intensity, evoking awe and stirring the imagination. Such experiments allow us to glimpse the sensory experience of Bronze Age communities, to hear echoes of the past, and to appreciate the profound understanding of materials, form, and acoustic principles that ancient artisans possessed. The symbolism of the horn extends beyond its practical use. It represents human ingenuity, the intersection of art and function, and the enduring power of music in social and spiritual life. In its elongated bronze form, it embodies the human desire to communicate across distance, to mark presence, and to connect with forces larger than oneself. The horn's sound is a bridge between the temporal and the eternal, a voice that continues to speak even after thousands of years of silence. Imagine the landscape in which the horn was played: rolling hills, dense forests, misty mornings, and twilight gatherings, all punctuated by the deep call of bronze. The horn's notes may have accompanied processions, rituals of sacrifice, or celebrations of the harvest. It may have served as a call to counsel, a warning, or a summons to sacred rites. In every scenario, the horn functioned as a medium of connection between individuals, communities, and the divine. The lyre horn also reflects the broader cultural context of the Nordic Bronze Age. Artifacts from this period reveal a society attuned to cycles of nature, celestial movements, and communal ritual. The horn fits seamlessly into this cultural landscape, embodying both practical ingenuity and spiritual expression. Its preservation, especially when paired with other ceremonial items, offers insight into a worldview in which music, sound, and ritual were inseparable from daily and sacred life. Holding the horn, one might reflect on the countless hands that shaped it, the breath that brought it to life, and the ears that listened in wonder. Each horn is a nexus of human creativity, technical skill, and spiritual aspiration. Its existence challenges modern perceptions of prehistoric societies, reminding us that art, music, and ingenuity are not the products of a specific era but are timeless facets of human experience. Even the decorative elements etched into some lyre horns tell a story. Spirals, concentric patterns, and abstract motifs may have conveyed symbolic meaning, perhaps representing cosmology, lineage, or spiritual concepts. These decorations, while subtle, enrich the horn's narrative, suggesting a culture in which artistry and functionality coexisted harmoniously. The horn was not merely a tool, it was a statement of identity, a testament to human creativity, and a vessel of communal memory. As we listen to modern recreations of the lyre horn, imagining its echo across ancient landscapes, we are reminded of the continuity of human experience, the need to communicate, to celebrate, to connect with the sacred, and to express ourselves through sound transcends time. The horn, though thousands of years old, resonates with the same impulses that drive music and ritual today. Its sound is not merely ancient, it is alive, echoing human aspiration, ingenuity, and the universal language of emotion. In contemplating the lyre horn, we are invited to bridge time, to hear the distant voices of Bronze Age Denmark, and to appreciate the skill, thought, and spiritual engagement of its makers. The horn is more than a musical instrument, it is a conduit of human expression, a repository of cultural knowledge, and a symbol of the profound ways in which sound can shape and reflect community, belief, and creativity. Ultimately, the horn that spoke to gods embodies the convergence of craftsmanship, artistry, and spirituality. Its voice, once carried across fjords, forests, and fields, now echoes in museums, studies, and the imagination of all who encounter it. It reminds us that even in prehistoric times, humans sought to transcend the ordinary, to communicate with forces larger than themselves, and to leave a mark that endures across millennia. Its sound is silent now, yet its story, ingenuity, and spiritual resonance continue to speak, inviting reflection, admiration, and awe. And so, the bronze lyre horn remains an enduring testament to the ingenuity, artistry, and spiritual depth of our ancestors, a relic that once spoke to gods and still whispers to us across the centuries. The statue that wept without rain, nestled high among the emerald slopes of the Andes, where the clouds drift lazily over jagged peaks and the sunlight glimmers off distant valleys, there exists a statue that has captivated generations, not merely for its craftsmanship but for the inexplicable phenomena it seems to possess. Known as the Virgin of Quito, this statue is more than a religious icon. It is a vessel of mystery, an artifact that challenges perception and evokes awe. Unlike ordinary sculptures, the Virgin of Quito has been said to weep, not with water, not with tears formed in the usual way, but in ways that defy explanation, leaving those who witness it both entranced and unsettled. At first sight, the statue is breathtaking in its elegance. Carved with meticulous care from cedar wood and adorned with gilded features, the Virgin of Quito radiates a presence that seems almost alive. Her eyes, wide and searching, hold a serenity that is both comforting and commanding. The folds of her robe, rendered with such precision that they seem to sway in an unseen breeze, suggest motion, a life beyond the static nature of carved wood. Every line, every angle, is intentional, reflecting not only the skill of the artist, but also the devotion and cultural significance of the era in which she was created. The phenomenon of weeping is central to the statue's mystery. Accounts vary, some describing glistening droplets forming on the cheeks, others noting moisture that disappears upon closer inspection, and still others telling of subtle tears that seem to shimmer with light, reflecting emotions rather than water. Scientists and theologians alike have examined these claims, some attributing them to condensation, environmental factors, or even psychological perception, while others insist there is something far beyond ordinary explanation, a spiritual or metaphysical presence imbued within the figure. To stand before the Virgin of Quito, whether in awe or skepticism, is to confront a sense of the inexplicable, a reminder that not all aspects of human experience are easily categorized. The history of the statue deepens its aura. Created in the 18th century by the renowned sculptor Bernardo de la Garda, a master of the Quito School of Art, it was intended as a devotional figure, a symbol of faith for a community deeply intertwined with both European religious tradition and indigenous Andean culture. The blending of stylistic elements, European Baroque elegance with local motifs, reflects a society negotiating identity, spirituality, and artistic expression. The Virgin of Quito was not merely a statue, she was a bridge, a tangible manifestation of cultural synthesis and spiritual devotion, and over time, she became a focal point for stories, miracles, and unexplained events that would capture the imagination of all who encountered her. The statue's placement in the Basilica of the National Vow in Quito is deliberate. Positioned on a high pedestal, surrounded by light and air that drift through open arches, she presides over the city with an almost ethereal presence. Pilgrims and visitors alike approach her quietly, some in prayer, some in wonder, all feeling the weight of centuries of devotion that linger in the space. The air around the statue is often described as charged with anticipation, as if the very atmosphere participates in the phenomenon. The Virgin's gaze, soft yet penetrating, seems to follow visitors, acknowledging their presence, and perhaps even their doubts. Accounts of the statue weeping are not merely anecdotal, they have been recorded repeatedly over decades. Witnesses speak of sudden glistening on the cheeks, droplets forming and glimmering in the light, vanishing as mysteriously as they appeared. Some attribute the phenomenon to environmental factors, the humid mountain air, subtle temperature shifts, but many insist that such explanations fail to account for the timing, intensity, and seeming intentionality of the tears. Those who experience it often report profound emotional reactions, a sense of comfort, a shiver of awe, or an unshakable conviction that something beyond human understanding is at work. What makes the Virgin of Quito particularly compelling is the intersection of artistry and mystery. The sculptor Bernardo de la Garda was known for infusing his works with a vitality that suggested life. The Virgin's posture, slightly forward as if leaning toward the viewer, combined with the delicate tilt of her head and the meticulous rendering of her hands, creates an effect of presence rather than mere representation. It is this lifelike quality that makes the reports of weeping so potent. The statue does not merely sit in silence, it interacts with the observer, evokes emotion and invites contemplation. The statue also serves as a mirror for human devotion and belief. Those who claim to witness the tears often describe feelings of personal connection, divine attention, or spiritual reassurance. The phenomenon transcends simple curiosity. It becomes an intimate experience, a private dialogue between the observer and something greater. In this way, the Virgin of Quito is not only a sculptural masterpiece, but also a medium through which intangible experiences of faith, wonder, and even fear are communicated. Art historians and scientists have explored the possibilities of the statue's tears extensively. Some suggest condensation from the humid climate of Quito could account for moisture forming on the wooden surface. Yet this explanation cannot fully reconcile the reports of tears appearing in specific patterns, often on clear, dry days, and sometimes seeming to respond to the emotional state of the observer. Others propose that microscopic pores in the wood might release oils or resins under certain conditions, but again, these physical theories fall short of explaining the remarkable consistency and timing of the occurrences. Cultural narratives have intertwined with these physical theories. Folklore in Quito speaks of the Virgin weeping during times of turmoil, or when the community faces moral or spiritual challenges. Some tales tell of individuals experiencing personal revelations, guidance, or warnings after witnessing the phenomenon. The statue thus operates on multiple levels, as an artwork, as a spiritual icon, and as a focal point for communal memory and myth-making. The Virgin of Quito is at once tangible and elusive, embodying both historical craftsmanship and enduring mystery. The artistic techniques employed by De la Garda reveal the depth of his understanding of human perception. He carved not only forms but emotions, embedding a sense of humanity into the Virgin's serene expression. Her gaze is directed subtly downward, as if acknowledging both devotion and doubt. The softness of her features contrasts with the precision of her robe and the gilded adornments, creating a dynamic interplay between realism and stylization. In this artistry lies the secret power of the statue. It commands attention, elicits emotional response, and blurs the line between the animate and inanimate. Visitors' experiences contribute to the ongoing mystery. Pilgrims recount moments when they felt as if the Virgin's eyes followed them, her expression shifting in response to their prayers, their confessions, or their inner turmoil. These experiences are deeply personal yet strikingly consistent across decades, suggesting that the statue has an enduring psychological and emotional impact. Whether one interprets this as a spiritual phenomenon, an artistic triumph, or a combination of both, the effect is undeniable. The Virgin of Quito leaves an impression that persists long after one has left her presence. Even the construction materials play a role in the statue's mystique. Cedar wood, chosen for its durability, fragrance, and workability, imbues the sculpture with subtle warmth. The wood's natural oils interact with environmental conditions in ways that may contribute to condensation-like effects. Yet the almost supernatural timing of the tears continues to confound purely scientific explanations. Gilding enhances the sense of light and divine radiance, reflecting ambient illumination in ways that make the statue seem to glow, further enhancing the sense of presence. Historical records indicate that the statue quickly became a focal point for devotion after its creation. Stories of miraculous tears circulated among the faithful, attracting pilgrims from nearby towns and distant villages alike. The Virgin of Quito became a symbol of protection, spiritual guidance, and hope, especially during periods of social upheaval or natural disaster. The reports of tears often coincided with moments of collective anxiety or sorrow, reinforcing the perception of the statue as a living, responsive entity. The interplay between human belief and perceived phenomenon is particularly striking. Those who approach the statue with skepticism sometimes find themselves affected, drawn into an emotional and contemplative state simply by the presence of the figure. Its design, placement, and cultural significance create an environment in which awe and wonder flourish. Whether the tears are entirely physical, partially psychological, or entirely miraculous is less important than the fact that they compel reflection, empathy, and reverence. From a broader perspective, the Virgin of Quito exemplifies the power of religious art to shape human experience. Across cultures and centuries, statues, icons, and sacred objects have served as conduits for the ineffable, enabling communication with the divine, providing comfort, or inspiring moral reflection. The Weeping Virgin is a particularly vivid example, demonstrating how an object of wood, bronze, and paint can transcend its material form to influence human perception, emotion, and spirituality. In contemplating the Virgin of Quito, one also confronts the passage of time. The statue has endured centuries of social change, political upheaval, and environmental wear, yet she remains intact, preserved by devotion, careful restoration, and cultural reverence. Her tears, real or perceived, serve as a reminder of the continuity of human experience. The same emotions, doubts, hopes, and fears that moved worshippers centuries ago continue to resonate with those who encounter her today. Ultimately, the statue that wept without rain embodies a unique convergence of artistry, spirituality, and mystery. She challenges conventional understanding, blurs the boundaries between natural and supernatural, and offers an enduring connection to both cultural heritage and the human need for wonder. In every tear, whether formed by moisture, environmental conditions, or forces beyond explanation, there is a story of devotion, craftsmanship, and the timeless desire to touch something greater than oneself. Standing before the Virgin of Quito, one cannot help but reflect on the profound implications of such a phenomenon. The statue is a testament to the enduring power of human creativity, belief, and imagination. It whispers across centuries, reminding us that some mysteries are meant not to be solved, but to be experienced, contemplated, and cherished. The Virgin of Quito weeps, and in her tears she carries the weight of history, the hope of the faithful, and the unending fascination of the human mind. In this way, the statue continues to speak, without words, without explanation, yet with a resonance that transcends time, geography, and culture. The Virgin of Quito weeps without rain, yet her voice is clear, her presence undeniable, and her mystery eternal. The tower that stood without walls. High upon the rugged landscapes of Sardinia, where rocky outcrops meet the vast expanse of the Mediterranean, there exists a structure that has confounded archaeologists, historians, and travelers for centuries. Known as the Nura, these ancient towers rise defiantly from the earth, their shapes a testament to ingenuity, resilience, and an understanding of the world that remains elusive to modern comprehension. Among the thousands of nurajes scattered across the island, there are some that evoke a particular wonder. Towers that appear to stand without traditional walls, or at least without walls as we understand them, suggesting forms of construction and purpose that challenge conventional architectural logic. The Nurajes towers are, on first inspection, deceptively simple. Built during the Bronze Age, roughly between 1800 and 1100 BCE, they consist of stacked stones meticulously cut to fit together without mortar. The stones, some weighing several tons, were quarried from nearby hills and transported to the site with remarkable skill. What is striking about these towers, however, is not merely the precision of the stonework, but the way in which they engage with space, light, and the natural contours of the land. Certain nurajes give the impression of standing without walls, not hollow or fragile, but somehow defying the conventional understanding of enclosed construction. Observing them, one cannot help but sense an intelligence beyond simple fortification, an understanding of geometry, acoustics, and symbolism that speaks to a civilization both sophisticated and mysterious. The term nurahi itself is derived from local language and encapsulates both the form and function of these structures. While many scholars have theorized that the towers served as fortresses, religious sites, or community hubs, there is no consensus on their true purpose. Some nurahis are cone-shaped, others truncated, and a few are spiral-like in their internal structure. Each form seems to interact with its surroundings, harnessing wind currents, capturing sunlight, or framing views of sacred landscapes, such as nearby sacred wells, megalithic alignments, or celestial points of significance. In this, the towers reveal a people deeply connected to both their environment and their cosmos. The tower that stands without walls is particularly compelling. Unlike traditional nurahis, which are robust, enclosed, and heavily fortified, this tower appears skeletal at first glance. Massive stone slabs rise from the ground, aligned with precision, yet leaving gaps that suggest openness rather than containment. Some observers, from archaeologists to tourists, describe a sensation of being watched or guided as they walk around it, as if the structure is not merely a remnant of the past, but an entity in dialogue with the present. The alignment of the stones, the subtle curvature, and the careful consideration of balance suggest a level of architectural mastery that seems almost impossible given the tools and technology of the Bronze Age. One of the enduring mysteries of the Nuraga towers is their construction method. The stones are laid in a dry stone technique, meaning no mortar binds them together, yet they withstand centuries of seismic activity, storms, and the relentless passage of time. The gaps in the wall-less tower may have been intentional, serving as channels for light, sound, or even ritual movement. Some researchers propose that these openings acted as acoustic amplifiers, allowing signals, chants, or drumming to resonate across distances. Others suggest that the gaps held symbolic or ceremonial meaning, perhaps representing thresholds between the mundane and the sacred, between the living and the spirits of ancestors. The location of this particular tower amplifies its mystery. Perched on a plateau overlooking rolling hills and valleys, it commands a view of the horizon that is both strategic and breathtaking. From this vantage point, one can see clusters of other Nuragsas, settlement remnants, and the natural features that would have shaped daily life for Bronze Age Sardinians. The tower's openness allows for a panoramic perspective, letting observers sense both the immediacy of the landscape and the vast expanse of the world beyond. In this way, the tower is not merely a static object, it is an interface, connecting humans to land, sky, and memory. Legends have grown around such towers, stories passed down through generations. Locals speak of spirits who dwell within the stones, guardians of the land, or celestial watchers who communicate through the alignment of stones with stars. Some tales describe the tower as a meeting place for ancient kings or chieftains, a site where councils of elders deliberated while standing among the massive stones. Others suggest that it was a place of initiation, where youth or warriors were tested against the challenges of height, balance, and fear. Though these accounts are anecdotal, they reflect the powerful presence that the structure still holds, bridging tangible history with intangible folklore. Exploring the tower invites contemplation of human ingenuity. Each stone is precisely shaped, lifted, and positioned in a way that achieves stability without conventional walls. It suggests a knowledge of weight distribution, leverage, and geometry that may have been passed orally from master builders to apprentices over generations. Modern engineers marvel at the simplicity and effectiveness of the techniques, noting that the tower's endurance surpasses many contemporary constructions. To walk among the stones is to feel the quiet power of hands, minds, and spirits long gone, yet still present in the careful placement of every massive block. The tower also interacts with natural light in mesmerizing ways. As the sun rises and sets, beams penetrate the gaps, illuminating interior chambers and casting shadows that shift with the passage of hours. These effects are not accidental. The builders of the Bronze Age were keen observers of the sun, moon, and stars, and they integrated this knowledge into the architecture. Seasonal changes are reflected in how light moves across the stones, highlighting different features at solstices, equinoxes, or particular days that may have held ritual significance. The openness of the tower allows it to act as a natural calendar, a stone instrument recording celestial movement over time. Archaeological investigations reveal layers of use, adaptation, and repair. Evidence of fire, ritual offerings, and habitation hints at a multifunctional purpose, combining domestic, ceremonial, and defensive roles. Pottery shards, tools, and ornaments found in and around the structure speak of a vibrant community whose lives intertwined with the tower. The gaps in the walls, rather than signaling weakness, may have facilitated airflow, communication, and visibility, making the tower a living, interactive space rather than a static monument. Visitors today describe a profound emotional impact. Standing among the stones, feeling the cool wind, hearing the echoes of footsteps against stone, one senses a connection to those who labored here thousands of years ago. The openness of the tower creates a sense of vulnerability and awe, a reminder of human fragility in the face of enduring craftsmanship. It is a place that invites reflection on time, labor, and the intersection of human ambition with natural forces. Beyond its physical and emotional presence, the tower serves as a symbol. It represents the ingenuity of the Nuragic people, their ability to harmonize function, beauty, and symbolism. The tower stands as a testament to human creativity, a reminder that even in the Bronze Age, people sought to reach beyond the immediate, to leave a mark that would endure across millennia. Its skeletal form challenges assumptions about strength and protection, suggesting that power can reside not merely in solidity, but in design, understanding, and interaction with the environment. The mystery of the tower without walls is heightened by its continued resilience. Centuries of exposure to wind, rain, and occasional earthquakes have not toppled it. Restoration efforts have been minimal, respecting the original integrity of the stones. The tower endures, a silent witness to the rise and fall of civilizations, to the passage of countless human generations, and to the subtle rhythms of nature that continue to shape the landscape. Its architectural uniqueness has inspired speculation about connections to other megalithic cultures, from stone circles in Europe to pyramidal structures in the Mediterranean. Some scholars suggest that the knowledge and techniques observed in Sardinia might reflect widespread networks of trade, communication, and cultural exchange during the Bronze Age. Others caution against overgeneralization, emphasizing the distinctiveness of Nuragic architecture. Regardless, the tower invites curiosity and study, prompting us to consider the universality of human ingenuity and the diverse ways in which people have engaged with stone, space, and the sky. Walking through the gaps, tracing the lines of the stones with one's hands, one senses an almost meditative rhythm. The tower seems to encourage observation, quiet contemplation, and an appreciation of subtle detail. It is a space where past and present converge, where the tangible and intangible coexist, and where the human capacity for vision and creativity is made manifest in stone. The Nuragi Tower, without walls, is more than a structure, it is a lesson. It teaches patience, observation, and humility. It reminds us that strength is not only measured by enclosure, that permanence can be achieved through understanding, balance, and foresight, and that beauty often lies in the interplay of openness and solidity. For those who visit, it offers a rare opportunity to connect with the ingenuity of a civilization long gone, to sense their priorities, values, and understanding of the world around them. In the end, the tower stands quietly, defiantly, eternally. Its stones, arranged with deliberate care, continue to hold secrets that may never be fully understood. It invites reflection, awe, and curiosity, reminding us of the depth of human potential and the enduring power of thoughtfully placed stone. The Nuragi without walls is not simply an artifact of the past, it is a bridge, a voice from millennia ago, whispering lessons of creativity, harmony, and resilience. To stand beneath its open heights is to confront history, to witness the remarkable interplay of human ambition and natural law, and to marvel at a structure that has for thousands of years resisted explanation while commanding respect. The tower endures not merely as a relic, but as an idea, a proof that human ingenuity can shape the world in ways that inspire, confound, and endure beyond the limits of time. And so the Nuragi Tower without walls stands, quietly monumental, endlessly enigmatic, and profoundly human, a testament to the creativity, skill, and imagination of the people who dared to build, to dream, and to leave a mark upon the world that continues to speak across millennia. Thank you for exploring these incredible relics with us. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe, hit like, and share where you're watching from in the comments. Stay curious, and we'll uncover more unearthed secrets soon.